Hey everybody, happy Friday, and thanks for joining us here for our PCDIY live stream to be able to recap everything that we had in terms of new announcements for ASUS and ROG for CES 2022. There's a huge number of products that we have to actually run through in today's live stream, and I think a lot of you are going to be excited. I mean, we've got everything from, of course, the brand new ROG Swift OLED monitors. We got new 1440p at 360 hertz. We've got the brand new PG32UQXE. For those of you looking for large format 4K ultra high refresh rate, and HDR 1000 performance. We got new motherboards, we got new coolers, new routers, new peripherals, just an awesome wide range of awesome really hardware that I think is really going to be cool and fun to be able to dive into and be able to give you guys some insight into some of the products that you guys are going to be seeing from ASUS and ROG in 2022. So I've actually got a couple of files copying over here in a moment, just to be able to go ahead and bring up some of the images and things like that. So I'll be stepping away for a moment to be able to pick those up. But this is going to be a pretty awesome stream. Excited to be able to go ahead and jump on it. Hey, thanks Erica for letting us know everything's good. Hey Connor, thanks so much for joining us here on the stream. Fantastic to have you here as well. So overall, this is going to be a pretty exciting live stream. There's going to be definitely a lot to talk about. We'll hopefully be able to give you most of the information. It is important to keep in mind, though, that these are generally what we refer to as preliminary announcements. And what we mean by preliminary-based announcements is that things like MSRP and availability have not yet been defined. So I'm sure a lot of you are going to be asked, how much is it? When's it going to come out? And in regards to that, those are essentially going to be TBD or to be determined. Definitely as more information comes out over the coming weeks and coming months, we're definitely do our best to make sure that you guys stay informed in terms of the release date information. The best thing I can tell you is that, of course, if you're part of our ASUS PCDIY group, you'll definitely find out as soon as I have that information. So I'll also be updating what we have in our group, which is our PCDIY release product calendar, which is a calendar that essentially notes products that we have announced and will help you to provide insight in terms of when that product, we're looking to essentially release it in terms of not only the initial announcement, but maybe an update in terms of releasing it to channel availability, which means our product partners, and then the MSRP that's attached to the actual releasement once we actually put that product out into the channel. So again, if you're part of our group, then you can find out that information as soon as I have it. I generally try to update it, usually at least every couple of weeks, and definitely moving into 2022 with so many new products, I'll definitely be making sure to keep it up to date as soon as we get information from our local product management team as these products begin to come in to the pipeline. So yes, I definitely got a little bit of RGB going on right here, but definitely with ROG this year, there's going to be a lot of showcase to be going on in terms of the hardware. So hey Ryu, thanks for joining us here for the stream. Happy to have you here. Yeah, we're definitely going to be talking about the AXE 16,000. The AXE 11,000 still was a fantastic router, but definitely if you're looking for kind of the end all be all when it comes to routers now, especially for the fact that that is going to be the world's first quad band router in terms of offering Wi-Fi 6E, along with those three other bands, it's really going to be a truly impressive unit in terms of its features, functions, performance, and connectivity. All right. Hey, Rodney, thanks for joining us here. Happy to have you here first time for the stream. So a couple of just general updates that I do want to go ahead and make before I do jump into the kind of the general notes is going to be that there are going to be some UEFI releases that I will update in terms of the PCDIY group a little bit later today. So just make sure if you guys are interested in finding out the latest round of UEFI releases for Intel and AMD based motherboards. Normally I do cover those here in the stream and let you guys know what those may be about. But just in terms of preparation for the stream, I will essentially be posting those a little bit later than normal. So make sure if you're interested, just check out the featured announcement post that we'll have in the group if you're interested in terms of the latest UEFI releases. Okay. All right, well, let's get ready to go ahead and jump into it. Let me go ahead and get my files ready here. Probably step away just for one quick moment to go ahead and grab those files, and we'll get ready to go there. But the first thing that I did want to go ahead and jump into just before we get into talking about CES and everything like that is that we did talk about this a little bit in the past, which is going to be our ROG Saga. And so for those of you that are essentially not aware, but kind of what ROG Saga is all about is that it is kind of like the overall what we call worldview, or the information when it comes to our ROG series, the character designs, the actual kind of the worldview, everything that relates to ROG in terms of kind of the aesthetic and visual styling is part of what we call the ROG worldview. And we've spent time really over the last couple of years to really kind of dive into being able to provide more backstory and insight in terms of the character, the composition, and a lot of those different aspects. And one of the cool things that we've done recently is start to actually have these small videos that actually give you a little bit of insight into some of the key characters that we have as part of the ROG worldview. So we released a video for Horseman Take, for instance, who was the actual very first ROG character. And one of my personal favorite characters that we've gone ahead now and released a video for is going to be Akira. And so if you are interested in checking out the video, I'm just going to quickly show you a little bit of the video right here while I go ahead and get my files right there. So let me just go ahead and pull this up for you guys, and you guys can check this out right here. Oh, sorry, right there. Give me 1 second. Let me go ahead and refresh that. All right, there we go. So we do essentially have these series of videos that are available. They're on the ROG Global YouTube channel. I'm going to go ahead and link it for you guys in the chat. If you guys do want to check it out, feel free to check it out and let me know what you guys think. But it's pretty cool because it dives, like I said, a little bit more into the story of each one of these characters, so you can find out a little bit more about them. Hey, David, happy to have you here on the stream. Thank you so much. The Delta S Animate is actually pretty much already getting ready to push out in terms of channel distribution. So you should probably start to see it show up in terms of channel online availability. I'd hopefully say by the end of this month. It could possibly be earlier than that, but always when you're coming out of the very end of the holiday season, you're getting into the beginning of the year. Logistically, sometimes it can take a little bit more, and then you kind of add to that the compounded issues that you have relative to kind of the pandemic and how it affects everything in regards to logistical kind of rollout and deployment. That is a factor as well, but would expect to start to see it show up in terms of e-tailers in, like I said, the next couple of weeks. And we generally would hope that pretty much the majority of e-tailers that will be carrying the Delta S Animate should have it up by the end of the month. Okay. Hey, Frank, I'm sorry to hear that. If you definitely have feedback in terms of your thoughts, in terms of what we can do to improve upon whatever it is that the experience that you had, you can feel free and definitely reach out, PCDIY@asus.com. I'd be more than interested, especially with being with the company for more than 15 years, at listening to your feedback and seeing if it's something that, regardless of what your current stance is with us, hopefully it's something that we can improve upon. All right, so give me 1 second here, guys, and we will get ready to kind of get this thing started here. I'm going to go ahead and get our first. 1 sec here, guys. There we go. Sorry, I just needed to bring up my reference doc where I've got all the different items that we're going to be going over. And we will go from there. Okay, here we go. So I think probably first things first, I know probably for a lot of people, probably the most interesting product is going to be the ROG Swift OLED series monitors. So I think that we're going to probably start off with the OLED series. This is probably going to be, I think, where there's going to be a huge amount of interest. So we are going to start with these guys first. So give me 1 second here. And this was essentially the big announcement. I think one of the overall biggest announcements, although based on our polling, it actually was not the most, I'd say, in interest product that we had of all the actual products that we did announce at CES 2020 for the ROG lineup. But specifically, we will have two actually ROG series monitors that are going to be OLED based panels. So we've got the ROG 42-inch OLED. These are going to both be under the Swift designation, which means they're kind of our highest end flagship series type displays with the PG4UQ, right? And then we're also going to have the PG48UQ, which will essentially just be a larger version. So you're going to have a 42-inch version, and then you're going to have a 48-inch version. Now, kind of some people might be wondering about, well, what is kind of going to be the difference between this and, let's say, if you were considering, let's say, an OLED-based display that traditionally would be using a television as a form of a monitor. There are actually a lot of challenges in terms of using a television as a monitor. While there's definitely been improvements in terms of things like display latency, one, generally televisions, they do actually a lot of motion-based processing because they don't necessarily have to account for latency. Although people, of course, play games on them through the form of consoles, usually there's going to be maybe a specific input that's going to be on that television to be able to essentially reduce any type of motion-based processing that would be applied to, let's say, video that you're watching, which would be a key difference. In a monitor, there's generally not going to be any of that type of specialized video-based processing, which influences the overall latency. So that's important. There are also inherent differences in terms of what is called the subpixel arrangement, which actually can be preferential in terms of kind of sharpness and clarity when it comes to like text. When you talk about like a traditional monitor, like an LCD type monitor, than you would have versus an OLED monitor. And that is still inherently a kind of a bit of a difference between an OLED based display and a traditional LCD based display. But a lot of people really, of course, love the really impressive contrast, of course, that you have with an OLED display. But one of the challenges that you have is going to be something that you kind of see broken down right here, which is one that most televisions, they generally do feature some form of a glossy coating. With monitors, we generally favor having what's called an AR-based type of coating or type of display. And that essentially means an anti-reflective based display. And that's because if you've got overhead lighting, you've maybe got like a window right angled next to your monitor, you've got a light that's maybe positioned that's going to cause reflections. You don't want those reflections to essentially be causing a distraction point of reference. It can cause actually specular imaging where you can get like little dots on the display. It can actually also affect things like color accuracy. So one of the big differences is that we're actually utilizing a brand new micro texture coating, which is super fine to be able to essentially maintain our anti-reflective type of design that we would have in a monitor, but now have this on a large format monitor, which is OLED based. So that is going to be one of the key differences that you're going to have in terms of this ROG Swift OLED monitor. Another one right here is kind of broken down a little bit in terms of the key information, and this is going to be talking about temperature performance. Now, why is this going to be important? Well, let me go ahead and break a little bit of this down. So when you're talking about kind of temperatures for a monitor, temperatures for a monitor, it's not usually something kind of people think about. It has become more of a factor as we've gone to monitors that feature very high performing backlights, like what we have within our PG series monitors that might feature what's called full array local dimming or mini LED technology. But also this is a factor in OLED based televisions. With OLED based televisions, it's common to actually see temperatures that can be around 60 C, if not sometimes even a bit more. And this is actually part of the reason why there's a technology that's built into OLED televisions that's called ABL, or essentially automatic brightness limiting. So it actually will reduce the peak brightness that the display can output. And this is to help to maximize and conserve the lifespan of the organic light emitting diodes, the OLED elements that are within the TV, which inherently produce heat. If you can essentially help to keep a lower temperature, this helps to reduce things like burn-in and maximize overall lifespan and overall kind of operating efficiency. So one of the things that we know, because of course, a lot of the thermal analysis that we do, not only with the displays that we've worked on, take for instance, that utilize mini LED tech, but also just from a wide range of expertise in thermal analysis from so many different products that we produce, these type of units will actually have a specialized thermal layout built into the actual monitors themselves, along with a custom heatsink design, which will help to actually maintain the operating temperature at or below 50 C. And this is actually even with highly nominal brightness ratings than you would see actually on an OLED-based television. So an example of that might be up to like 900 nits, in a target portion of the screen. So that's also been one of the challenges that you see traditionally with an OLED-based television, is that they just don't reach the same level of peak brightness that you're going to, of course, have with something like a mini LED or even forthcoming micro LED type televisions. But this kind of combination not only helps to maximize the performance of the brightness levels that they can reach, but also helps to mitigate things like burn-in concerns. So that is going to be another factor. So again, to kind of recap there, if we kind of go back and we talk about a few of those elements that I'm going through here, right? One, you're going to have essentially that anti-glare reflection design that's going to be built in there with the microtexture coating. You're going to have that essentially that focus on better thermal efficiency, which is going to help to maximize overall brightness handling and also mitigate things like burn-in, along with some other technologies that are in there. Another one that some people may or may not know is that even some televisions actually are not fully equipped, even that state HDMI 2.1 at actually offering full 48 gigabits bandwidth. There have been some scenarios where actually it's found that actually the interconnect, the HDMI port itself, might only support like 40 gigabits. So it might actually not be operating like at 12-bit, but it might be operating at 10-bit. Essentially, they're handling the data information a little bit differently. So of course, for us, the focus is to be able to align with, of course, the latest generation based not only consoles, but PC based enabled devices, and also, of course, graphics cards, right? So if you've got high performing GPUs, right, and you're going to connect this to that for your great 4K high refresh rate gaming experience, you're going to be able to get a great experience. So of course you're going to have a DisplayPort connection. That is going to be a key thing that you see right here, where you're going to have a DisplayPort option on the monitor, which of course that's traditionally not normally seen on a monitor. Most televisions only equipped HDMI-based interfaces, and then sometimes they might still utilize an analog-based video connection. So here you're going to have that DisplayPort, and you're going to have that full 48 gigabits HDMI 2.1 connection, right? These also are going to feature, of course, outstanding color accuracy, where we're going to be doing the calibration to them to be able to ensure a great experience. And there's going to definitely be a lot more information that will come out regarding these displays as we get closer and closer to the actual release target for these monitors. As of right now, like I said, there's not any specific information that we can provide regarding the actual MSRP or the actual release availability, but definitely in the not too distant future, we will be giving you definitely more information to help you kind of have the full understanding in terms of really what is going to be making these ROG Swift OLED monitors different. But to recap there, some key takeaways that you can keep in mind are going to be: one is going to be the anti-reflection based design, the thermal design, and then of course that full bandwidth, and then also the connectivity, right? So those four pieces are all, I think, ways that right now you can begin to kind of counter and compare what you're going to be looking at, right? Let me see if we've got any questions there before we get ready to jump into the next product right there. Hey, Ryu, I'm not sure what you're asking about there in terms of the AIO socket display. I think you might be maybe talking about this RYUJIN 2 cooler that I've got right here. This is a customizable display. It's a 3.5-inch display, so you can go into our Army Crate software. You can put in custom animations. You can put custom stills. We have a wide range of actually specialized presets in there. You can have videos. It also has AIDA64 integration, so you can actually have different stat panels. So you can have multi-stat panels integrated in there for readout. So you could have things like, frequency, voltage, temperature, different parameters. So there's a lot of flexibility in terms of what can be defined there. Hey, Leighton, thanks for the Happy New Year wishes. Best to you and yours, man, and happy 2022. Hey, Kevin, there's always going to be continuing forthcoming UEFI updates for boards, especially I think for recent boards like we've got with the Z690. I don't know about your memory issues. I'd recommend, posting them in the PCDIY group to give you some insight. I would tell you right now that actually, I think the UEFI releases are quite mature in terms of overall memory interoperability. Most users that generally run into issues that think it's UEFI related, BIOS related, are actually wrong. They generally just don't understand some of the limitations in terms of how a memory controller works. I'll give you a very good example of this. Is that if let me say here, I bring over this board, right? So this is actually a Z690-A. It's got two DIMMs on right here, right? This is DDR4 board. It wouldn't matter, again, if you were talking about DDR5. Actually, for DDR4, it's even less likely of an issue because the memory controller and the memory code is really refined, because DDR4 is really kind of a known kind of entity in terms of how it works. But an example, let's see, if you have two DIMMs, and then you decide to go to four DIMMs, some users will buy initially a 2-DIMM kit, and then they'll buy another set of 2 DIMMs, and then they'll apply an XMP profile, and it won't be stable. And then they blame the motherboard, or they blame the UEFI BIOS, and they say that it's buggy or has an issue. And this is actually, it's just wrong, because what is actually happening is that you're taking a profile, so a set of frequency, timings, and voltages that were actually defined for 2 DIMMs, and specifically the ICs, those 2 DIMMs, and their density and their rank. So what I mean by density and rank essentially would be, if this is 8 gigabytes or 16 gigabytes or 32 gigabytes, right? And then the rank would be whether the DIMMs are actually, the ICs are populated on both sides, because that also does affect a couple of parameters. Generally, single rank memory is easier to handle than dual rank based memory. But when you then go over to like 4 DIMMs, this is actually quite a bit more stressful for the memory controller, and the same actually corresponding profile. So that frequency, timings, and generally the voltage might not be the same between that 2-dim application and that 4-dim application. This can also even be more problematic if you're talking about a higher frequency. So an example is if we bypass DDR4 and we go to DDR5, some people will be running a 6,000 megahertz dim, right? And then they put in two more DIMMs. So they have 4 6,000 megahertz DIMMs, expecting that they think that the board can run 4 DIMMs at 6,000 megahertz. That's not really actually a determining factor by the motherboard. It's a determining factor by the CPU, which has what's called the memory controller. The memory controller has to actually be able to sustain that number of DIMMs in relation to that frequency, and it's just not possible, especially when you're talking about an overclock frequency. So without more information, I can't really give you insight, but I generally find in almost probably 90% of cases that it's usually because of some variability in terms of the configuration parameter that's been applied. But again, if you have more questions, feel free to go ahead and post them in the group, and I'll definitely do my best to follow up with you when I can. All right. So that gives us a quick recap again on the ROG Swift OLED-based monitors. Hold on. So if we don't have any other questions there on those monitors, then we're going to get ready to jump into our next item to recap. So give me one sec here. I will go ahead and actually link this in the chat just in case anybody wants to check these out. So give me 1 second. I will drop the link in here. So if anybody does want to check out these monitors, they can do so. So give me 1 second here. And this will have pretty much all the current information that as of right now that we do have on these displays. So again, a quick recap. We will have essentially 2 ROG Swift OLED-based monitors here with the the ROG Swift OLED PG32UQ, which essentially is going to be a 42-inch. And then we're going to have the ROG Swift PG28UQ, which will be essentially a larger version, a 48-inch, right? And like I said, the key characteristics of differential are going to be that anti-reflective microtexture coating, the thermal design, which is going to help to ensure essentially lower operating temperature to mitigate things like burn-in and help to maximize overall lifespan, and overall help to provide actually better also brightness performance, full guaranteed HDMI connectivity in terms of 2.148 gigabits and integrated DisplayPort connectivity. And there will also be some other things. So just make sure to keep it tuned, guys. So let's go ahead and get ready to move this along to our next product here. So give me 1 sec. What are we going to jump into? I think next, let's take a look at the ROG Chakram X. So this is a pretty cool mouse. I'm pretty excited about this guy. This is going to be an update to the current ROG Chakram that we currently have. And the cool thing about this mouse is going to be that we've kind of really taken it to the next level in every single aspect. So whether we're talking about the sensor, whether we're talking actually about, I think, the ergonomic design aspects, which some users were hoping to see some refinement to the actual way that we had the placement in regards to the actual joystick, and pretty much any of the other aspects, we've definitely done that with the ROG Chakram X. So we've also kept a lot of the items that I think a lot of people really like about this mouse. So let's go ahead and get ready to jump into this. And let me see, before we go into that, if we've got any other questions. I might need to grab my photos here in a moment, but give me 1 second. Sorry, right here. Let me see. Oh, definitely. Okay. Well, yeah, this will be very interesting for you to see, I guess, how this is going to compare to the current monitor that you're running. So let's go ahead and check a look here at the ROG Chakram X. So the ROG Chakram X right here is going to be first and foremost a tri-mode based mouse. So what we mean by tri-mode is going to be that this is going to be 3 points of connectivity. So you've got USB-C connectivity, which is pretty much already a hallmark on all current ASUS ROG mice. 2, it's going to have the highest grade current Bluetooth that is available. So this is going to be great if you're wanting to connect this with multiple devices, whether it's like a phone, a tablet, a laptop, another Bluetooth enabled device. It will support up to 3 pairing profiles. I believe it's a Bluetooth 5.2 specification. So that also supports Bluetooth low energy, which is great to maximize battery life. And then if you want to go the wireless route, of course, just like all of our current wireless gaming mice, it has ultra low latency gaming grade wireless. So that's 1 millisecond response based wireless with 2.4 gigahertz its connectivity. And the dongle actually stores directly inside this mouse, so it's really easy. You don't have to actually worry about it. That adapter is going to store right in there, so it's really easy to work with. So that is the first point, is that it is going to be going to be a tri-mode mouse. Now, the new one also right here is going to be that it uses a brand new optical sensor. So the optical sensor that we have on this model is going to be what we are referring to as a new aim point sensor. So you're going to see 36,000 DPI. Of course, for the vast majority of users, that's going to be way more than they would ever utilize. But the benefit essentially of just having a higher performing sensor is just going to be essentially just improved accuracy. And really another big part to this is that the CPI deviation that we've done, just like what we did in terms of fine tuning the actual deviation that you would see within things like the switches for the mice, is something that we've also looked at, where we're beating the actual industry average in terms of the actual CPI deviation to be very tight and consistent. So we really want this to be a very, very high performing sensor, a really kind of best in class experience. And then you've got the 8,000 hertz polling rate. This, for probably most users, is not going to be a factor, but the big benefit that you have with 8,000 hertz polling is going to be in alignment with ultra high refresh rate displays to be able to maximize the overall display latency and input latency experience. So again, if you're probably running a more traditional kind of display in terms of the refresh rate, or even kind of moderate high refresh rate, it's not a concern. But as we are on our journey to 1,000 hertz, it's important to actually have a higher polling rate for the mouse, so that you essentially have alignment with the entirety of the input chain. So that is going to be an important point. And to tie in with that is that this mouse will also support what is called the NVIDIA Reflex, which means that it will work with our monitors that have NVIDIA Reflex support, so it can be plugged in so that you can actually check all the actual latency information in real time on the monitor's display. It's a pretty cool feature if you're not aware of the way that it works. So this is going to be the other one, is the actual programmable joystick. So I'm going to bring up actually the images here in a moment. I'm going to go grab them in 1 sec so I can get them. So give me 1 sec, but I will actually show you a little bit closer up actually what that kind of looks like. And I might actually have a Chakram right here that I can show you guys a little bit more closely, some of the design elements, and you'll see actually what I'm talking about in terms of this mouse. Because while we have kind of designed elements of it, it is very kind of be similar to the current mouse that we have right now. So give me 1 second right there. Hey, Lajimi20. So this is actually a really great question. So before I grab those pictures really quick, let me go ahead and just clarify that for you. So when you guys at ROG think about new ideas and products, is there one guy at every station, or do you guys see what customers want most? Also, new ideas from kind of the forum. So it's always a hybrid of this. ROG has actually now been around for about 15 years. I've been lucky enough to pretty much be with ROG since just about the very first product, which was a motherboard. And even at that time, when we pretty much only had a very small set of product managers, it was always kind of I would say, a synergy in terms of the product development. And this is really at ASUS's core. One is extraordinarily world-class leading R&D efforts. So our R&D are always kind of looking at kind of pushing the design envelope, thinking about innovative features and functions, right, and what we can put into those products. And sometimes in that regard, we're going to be ahead of what even users think about, right? Or we could be actually in alignment. Maybe they're thinking about something that they think is not possible, and we end up implementing it, right? An example of this could be something as simple as the clear CMOS button. People take it for granted. We invented the clear CMOS button on a motherboard because we thought, why should you have to short pins on a motherboard to clear the CMOS? Why not have a button that you can press and actually do that, right? Or something like the Q release button on our motherboards, where you can press this button and eject the graphics card, as opposed to having to hit a little button to eject the graphics card, right? Or the Q M.dot release, or so many different kind of aspects like that. So one is definitely going to be our R&D. Then our product management team, along with individuals in the marketing team, our sales team, our community management, all those different things, take a kind of I'd say a symbiotic process of looking at the community, looking at e-tailer feedback, review feedback, RMA feedback, all the different points of feedback, partners that we work with feedback, and integrating that in. So it is a holistic design process that's balanced between not only the product managers that we have, the ID design team, our R&D team, the users, our partners, really everybody all together. So it is a very kind of holistic and symbiotic process in terms of the design and development. And not to, be that guy, but I do want to call out when you say, or do you guys, is there one guy? Actually, many of our product managers on the ROG team, even for our motherboard group and other teams, are women. So it's fantastic to actually have a diverse set of individuals at the product management level that design and develop our products for our enthusiasts out there. Okay. Are there any Cheeto proof check? Well, that gets a little bit interesting. I will tell you that we do have actually products that are IPX certified even under our peripheral lineup. And so being IPX certified, because they're going to be more resilient to, dust, debris, dander, even water buildup and stuff like that, does give you actually a high level of resilience, so that I guess if you're really worried about, getting stuff gummed up in certain spaces, then you're going to have a higher level of durability and reliability. But it's not something you'd have to be super, I think, concerned about in most kind of situations. Give me 1 second, guys. I'm just going to go ahead and grab those photos really quick and see if I've got that Chakram really quick that I can grab, and we will keep moving these things along. So give me 1 second here. All right, everybody, back right here. Thank you, guys. So yes, I did actually have a Chakram right here that I can show you. So this is not the Chakram X. This is the current Chakram, but this is going to be pretty similar in terms of the overall size and shape that you're going to see when we're talking about the actual Chakram mouse. So the big thing that you're going to notice here when you compare it to kind of a traditional mouse is that on the side profile right here, you're going to see that it actually has a joystick. Now, this can actually be removed, so you can have a more traditional actually type of mouse design. Here's the Gladius, where you can see that it's got just a smooth side body, right? And as opposed to here, you have the joystick. This is going to be a little bit of a longer body, so I do think that it favors people with a little bit larger hands, as opposed to people, of course, with smaller hands, where they might favor something like our Gladius mouse, or maybe even something like the ROG Curious or our new M4 wireless from the Tough Gaming lineup. Those are going to be maybe better options for people that have smaller hands. But when it comes to ergos and kind of preference when it comes to mice, that can really vary for a lot of different people. So let's go ahead and just take a little bit of a closer look here in terms of this mouse. All right, so here you guys go. This is going to be the current Chakram, but like I said, it's going to be very similar to the Chakram X that's going to be coming out. So you see it has this kind of interesting side body. I do like how it kind of swoops down right here. It gives your place so that you can go ahead and have a little bit of kind of resting space for your thumb if you do want to have that right there. You'll see right there, there's that side profile that I'm talking about, right, which is a little bit different than in a traditional mouse, where you can see that does have that joystick, right? And this allows you to customize how you can actually do a wide range of different things, not only in games, but in general desktop use, because you've got a joystick. Now, this, for comparison, you can see on the Gladius 3, it's got a much more traditional kind of side body, right? Where on the Chakram, you can see that you got the joystick. Now, this has been redesigned on the Chakram X for actually a better reach and better position based on users' feedback on the current base model. But I'm just showing you right there. The other kind of key aspect is going to be that you'll see that this model, you can remove this kind of nice transparent housing. It's magnetic, and you can customize the etching symbol right here because this has RGB lighting. The other cool part to this is going to be what we call our push fit hot swap socket design. So the Chakram is really cool because it's the simplest mouse that we offer in terms of customizing your switches. So you see, these are actually the switches that are on the mice. This is an ROG mouse kind of hallmark where you can actually remove your switches and you can change them out. So one upgrade that you're going to have here on the ROG Chakram X is this current mouse is not like the Gladius 3, which is right here next to it. The Gladius 3 is the world's only mouse that gives you support for optical and traditional micro switches, so you can run either type of switch in the mouse. With the Chakram the Chakram X, you'll actually now also be able to support both. So you can either go with the traditional micro switch, or you can go with an optical switch. And it's quite simple. You literally just pull out that switch, and you can just swap them out. We do actually give you just a little switch remover, and you can just pull that out, and you just pop it back in there. You go there, pop that in place like this. Right, and you would literally be good to go. So it's a very seamless, kind of easy experience if you want to be able to customize that. You do have hardware-based DPI that you can go ahead and switch on the unit. You can switch between the Bluetooth, between the actual 2.4 gigahertz low latency wireless, the USB-C connectivity right there that you can see right there in terms of your USB-C port. You also do have some nice RGB lighting that'll be right here, RGB lighting that'll be on the scroll wheel, and RGB lighting that will be on the back here as well on this unit. So that is going to be some of the main elements right there. So let's head back there, and I'm also pull up, like I said, images right now for this mouse. So give me 1 second. But if we head back over here, so we covered that, the ROG aimpoint optical sensor, right? 36,000 DPI, 8,000 hertz polling rate, the tri-mode connectivity, the programmable joystick, the adjustment options that are available, right? DPI-based adjustment that we talked about, the push-fit socket design as well. This one will also come updated, the actual cable. This is going to be our newer ROG paracord cable. So this is something that came out after the original Chakram and came with our newer mice like our Keras, as well as the Gladius 3. So the ROG paracord cable is this very ultra lightweight, smooth cable. So it's really designed to have very minimal drag and resistance. It feels really nice. It's really smooth. I love it. Then of course you have 100% PTFE based feet there. So for super good movement and kind of gliding ability. This is one of our only mouse that gives you the flexibility of not only have traditional quick charging support through the USB, but this also does support wireless charging, and of course can work with our Batless Qi gaming surface, a mouse pad. So you can go ahead and do that as well. And then like I lastly said, we've got NVIDIA Reflex support certification. So let me go ahead and bring up a couple just close-up images right here, guys, and see if anybody's got any questions right there. Yes. So can a cable be used? Yeah, like I noted, this is going to be a tri-mode level mouse. So you can use a USB-C cable, which will come included with the unit. You can also use the 2.4 gigahertz wireless connection, or you can also use Bluetooth. So it's really up to you as far as how you want to connect the mouse. It's any one of those three different options are all available to you. You don't have to go with one kind of option. Although for NVIDIA Reflex, it generally has to be a wired-based connection. And of course, for a lot of gamers out there that generally prefer kind of the lowest latency, the best responsiveness, then generally that's going to be, your preferred option is going to be a wired connection. Although for many gamers now, with especially gaming grade wireless, where you can have 1 millisecond wireless performance, a lot of gamers are now actually entirely okay to just use their mouse with a wireless-based connection as opposed to using a traditional USB-C cable. I will say though, one of the other cool things that I like about our mice being USB-C based is if you want to get custom USB-C cables to kind of have like a cool different aesthetic, you can get different customized USB-C cables. One of our great partners, Cable Mods, actually just recently started putting out their own USB-C cables, and they have kind of customized versions. We even have, I think, an ROG edition one, which you got some kind of cool custom colors to be able to kind of match everything up if you want to, but you could definitely get all kinds of different types of colors if that's something you're looking for. Yes, we do have quite a number of different mouse pads. We have actually soft mouse pads, we have hard mouse pads, we have RGB mouse pads. So we've got pretty much everything under the sun resonant to kind of really whatever you're looking for. So it doesn't really matter what type of kind of setup you're looking for there. So let's go ahead and yeah, here we'll bring up this closer shot right here, you guys, the Chakram, and then we'll get ready to take a look at our next product right here. Here you can see this is actually pretty much already, I already guys showed you the close-up right there, but you can actually see the RGB lighting zone that I talked about. So here's the RGB lighting zone, which looks pretty cool. Here's the other RGB lighting zone, and then back over here is where the other RGB lighting zone is. And here's actually the micro switch that I talked about, right? Where these are actually the ROG micro switches that do come with the mouse. And so this is another upgrade. These are the actual switches that will that already actually come included with our most recent high-end ROG mice. They are very high quality, 70 million clicks. They also use a gold electrode junction plating, which is really great to be able to maximize lifespan over time. But again, if you want to swap these out, you can go with either maintaining these, which they're outstanding. I love, they're super crisp, responsive, and accurate, really great micro switches. But if you want to switch these out to like an Omron optical switch, you can do that. So the choice is up to you. And again, normally to do this, it would be a lot more complicated to be able to customize the switch. You would have to literally solder, right, the switches, so you could potentially damage and burn your whole mouse if you were wanting to do that. So this is a much simpler process with our push fit socket design, where literally you can just pull out the switch, put in the new switch, and that's it. It's a much simpler process. All right, guys. So that wraps up there with our next product, which is the ROG Chakram X. So that gets us covered there. So let's go ahead and see what we got next right here. I'm going to go ahead and double check and see if we got any questions there before I get ready to move on to the next segment. So give me 1 second here. Looks like we are okay. Okay. So let me see. What's the next one? Okay. I think maybe we'll do the ROG Fusion headsets. And then probably we'll do some more monitors, because I know everybody loves monitors, right? All right. So let's go ahead and bring these guys up right here. So these are going to be pretty cool. I'm pretty excited actually about these headsets, because they have a pretty cool kind of design. Okay, there we go. Oh, and sorry, I don't think I dropped in that. I don't think I dropped in the link for the ROG Chakram X, so I will do that, guys, in a second. So I will make sure to go ahead and put that in there. So we are going to have two versions of this headset. We're going to have the ROG Fusion 2 300 and the ROG Fusion 500. These are both going to be the Fusion 2, right? So that's important to note. Fusion 2, 300 and 500. And a little bit towards the end, I'll actually talk specifically about the differences between the 300 and the 500, but they're going to be almost identical. The main differences will just be a little bit in terms of, one, the aesthetic lighting design, and then some of the actual on-cup controls, right? But overall, for the kind of the key audio experience, the connectivity experience is going to be pretty similar, but there will be a couple of little differences that I will detail. Hey, Sneff, happy to have you here. Fantastic. Thanks so much for joining us, man. And happy 2022, man. So happy New Year's. All right. So the first thing is going to be that this is, of course, an RGB based headset. You'll see right there that it has a full, of course, addressable RGB lighting design. This will be a little bit different if we actually take a look at the 300. So let me see if I can actually pull up the link here 1 second for the 300. And then that way we can kind of look a little bit side by side on both of those models. So give me 1 second here. Yeah, I think I got the 300 right here. Okay, cool. Yep. So we'll get side by side here, get the 300, get the 500. Perfect. Okay. So let's go ahead and pull that up, and you guys can kind of see a little bit of the difference here. Hey, I believe Raid. No, these are both going to be wired headsets. They are not wireless. But if we take a look right here, you'll see that this is going to have like a little bit of this kind of straight line, kind of horizontal based design. And this one has this kind of little bit of a broken up design. They're both full addressable RGB lighting that's on there, but you'll notice that's a little bit of the difference right there. And then also you'll see here on the band, this one has a little bit kind of like a two-toned, where it's got a little bit more of a chrome silver accent. And this one has a little bit more of a black accent design, right? But overall, they're pretty similar. There you guys can see right there a little bit more closely, right? I think that'll work right there. Okay. Yeah. So you can see right there in terms that there's just a little bit of the aesthetic design difference right there. And then you've also got, like I said, that little bit of difference in the band, right? The ear cups, which I'll talk about a little bit, they're going to be actually pretty similar, right? But that is going to be the 300 difference. So let me go ahead and get back over here to the 500. So RGB, this is going to be our quad DAC based technology in terms of the design. So that means that there's actually integrated an ESS Saber DAC, 4 of them in there with an amp. That means that these are going to natively be a digital based headset. So these will connect via USB-C, but they'll also come with an adapter to give you Type A connectivity. This is great though, because that means that you can go ahead and connect these type of headphones directly to a wide range of devices. So if you want to connect this to your Nintendo Switch, to your phone, to your laptop, to your desktop, any device, you can just directly plug into it and get a really nice premium consistent experience and get the benefit of the integrated quad DAC technology. The quad DAC also does give us the benefit that we actually have advanced, essentially, frequency spectrum post-processing, and really gives you really great detail and tonality. So you're going to have a really nice experience, whether it's going to be music, movies, videos, games, whatever it might be. You can have a really nice and solid detailed experience when it comes to the overall audio for this headset. So beyond that actual ESS quad DAC design, they will also support a virtual 7.1 surround support. So if you want multi-channel audio that's up matrix, that is going to be supported. The other one is going to be AI beamforming microphone. So this is a big one. Now, a lot of other headsets do, of course, have microphones, but most of the microphones generally will utilize some form of a boom mic design. This is going to be a big difference, though, here specifically with this model is going to be essentially the AI beamforming. So this is giving you a good kind of representation. The actual microphones are directly built into here. And then with advanced, essentially, AI here, what we're doing and that beamforming, we're specifically targeting where the actual voice pickup is occurring. And then we're also eliminating any type of other surrounding noises. So you don't have to worry about kind of other sounds that might be around you, whether it's an HVAC, a dog barking, whatever might be going on. So you're getting the benefit of going to be a directed, focused dialogue, right? Without having to make any adjustment, right? Or even when your head moves or tilting back and forth, if you take your headset off, where a boom has to sometimes be readjusted or moved or whatever it might be, you don't have to worry about any of that because it's all integrated directly into the headset. And it's always going to be in alignment in terms of picking up where your voice is targeted. So this is, I think, is actually a really cool design. You get that AI beamforming technology and along with that AI noise canceling technology. So that's going to be a really, really cool aspect. And you can actually listen the difference right here. So I'm going to put this link right now in the chat for you guys if you guys want to check this out. So that is going to be a pretty cool feature. Yeah, so the microphones are integrated on this model. They are not built in. Hey, Gabby, happy to have you here. Thanks so much for joining us in terms of joining us here for the stream. So they are integrated based microphones, right? So, again, RGB lighting, right? The ESS, a quad saber DAC design, the 7.1 surround sound, the AI beamforming microphone, the AI noise canceling support, the game chat volume function. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. That's going to be also something that we've got that's new here on these headphones. So the cool thing is right here, you'll see the on-cup controls. You have actually the ability to actually adjust chat as well as actually general game audio. So normally it's kind of like one or the other, right? Or just kind of game audio. You can't have both, but here you have the flexibility. Keep in mind that the game chat function is specifically only for PC. It doesn't apply to console, but you can see that there's actually toggle switch buttons that you have right here, and you can go ahead and make those adjustments really clearly and easily. They actually do have also a textured finish, which is nice as opposed to, I think, being smoother because it gives you a little bit more tactile feel when you're making that adjustment to move up or down. It feels nice and consistent. So that is going to be a cool element. This is also going to be one of the key differences between the Fusion 500 and the Fusion 300. The Fusion 300 won't have this game chat function, where the 500 will have the game chat function, okay? And when we talk about that connectivity also, that is going to be also one other difference is that the 500 will give you support actually for 3.5 millimeter connectivity. So standard kind of just connection analog, right? With a cable, plug it into your laptop, plug it into your phone, plug it into whatever analog device that you have, as well as the USB-C. While the 300 is only going to be digital. So it's not going to have that 3.5 millimeter, right? Some people might ask, well, why would you want the 3.5 millimeter? That could still be beneficial if maybe you even have a very, very high quality DAC or amp and you want even the better quality audio that might provide. That's where you could power the headphones through that type of solution, and an analog option would be beneficial. With the digital-based design, they generally are going to be more consistent because the benefit of the digital design is that whatever device you're plugging into, you're taking advantage of the DAC and amp that we have built into the headphone, which has been designed for those headphones. So it provides a far more consistent experience, because otherwise, if you took like an analog connection, you plug that in from your laptop to then like your Switch, to then like your phone, to then your PC, the audio experience could actually be different for all four of those devices because they all have a different DAC and amp, right? So that predominantly wraps up most of the design elements on here, except for this last one, which I think is cool. A lot of people forget this, and I still think it's one of the really cool distinguishing elements of our ROG headsets that many other manufacturers don't think about and don't include, is that this unit does come included with 2 sets of ear pads in the box. So you get 2 of these. It's not just one, you get both of them. You're going to get the ROG hybrid ear cushions and the ROG protein leather ear cushions. So the 100% protein leather ones are going to give you the absolute best isolation, and I think they're really comfortable, really, really nice in terms of overall their feel, and still have a reasonable amount of breathability to them, but they're going to provide you the best isolation. So if you really kind of want to have that best, I think, kind of enclosed experience, really tight sound, then that's going to be your preferred option. If you're somebody that's going to really be gaming for an extended extended period of time, so 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, that's where the hybrid ear cushions could be more beneficial because they even have better breathability and a faster cool down period, right? So they're not going to retain heat as much. So you get both of these. You can try them out. This is going to be entirely kind of relative. Some people are a little bit hotter. Some people are a little bit cooler. Some people, it depends on their room, their environment, how long they're wearing them, so many different factors. But the cool thing is you get 2 of these inside the box, and you can easily just pull them off and you can put them back on. So again, recapping right here, you can see the Fusion 200 and the Fusion 500 and the 300. As I noted, a key difference right here is 500 gives you the 2 modes of connection, analog and digital. 300 only gives you digital. They both have the quad DAC. They both use our Essence drivers, which are going to be optimized drivers along with our airtight chamber design, which gives you really good tonality, good punch and responsiveness for the bass. It's not overtly heavy. It doesn't sound muddy. It's clean. It's tight. It sounds good. You have that virtual surround support. Of course, RGB lighting support. The microphone is going to be integrated in terms of giving you that AI beamforming integrated mic, right? So you have that available to you. Both of them, of course, have that integrated mic, so it is hidden. The AI noise canceling support for the microphone, the dual ear cushion, ear cups, ear cushions, right? Whatever you want to call them, right? And then the other key difference right here is going to be the game chat volume control, right? So that is going to be the ROG Fusion headsets. I think pretty cool addition to what we have within our lineup. Let me see if we got any questions right here. Definitely, I agree. They're pretty epic. They're pretty sweet. Hey, Lex, yes, our target is that the release will be in 2022. So we did already cover those a little bit earlier in the stream, but yes, for more information, like I said, make sure to join our PCDIY group. Stay tuned to our social media channels. We'll have a product release calendar that I'll be updating continually also in the PCDIY group. Hey, Mr. Simonuk, 1969. Fantastic. Nice to have you joining us from Australia, man. Hope you're doing good. Happy 2022. I think that the RGB lighting looks pretty slick on these. So yeah, I definitely think that they look pretty cool compared to the prior generation. These are not a wireless-based headset. If you're looking for a wireless-based headset, we have 2 really nice options, the ROG Strix Go 2.4 gigahertz, and then we also have the ROG Strix Go BT. So those are 2 options that we have that are wireless headsets. Okay. Hey, I believe Fakarut28. Happy to have you here from Indonesia, man. Thanks for joining us on the stream. So very cool. All right, so that covers us for the ROG Strix Fusion headsets. Let's get ready to keep this moving along here, guys, and we will go to our next product. So give me 1 second here. And if I did drop that in the chat, let me drop let me drop the link there for anybody that wants to check those out. And I think that I also did not drop the link in there for the ROG Chakram, right? So I will drop the ROG Chakram in there as well. Okay, so we got those links that have been dropped in the chat. So let's get ready to head over to our next product. And let's see here. Oh, the Flare. Okay, what does everybody say? Do we want? I'm going to give the community, the viewers here, the choice. All right, so I really want to talk about the ROG Flare II Animate. So we've got 2. We have the Flare Animate and we have the Flare II, but this is our brand new keyboard. It's really, really slick in terms of the design. It has a really cool anime matrix display. It has hot swap switch designs on it. It's got 8,000 hertz pulling on it. It's a really, really sweet keyboard. Or we can talk about a monitor. It's up to you. Go ahead, and everybody in the chat, let me know in the next 5 seconds. You want to talk about the keyboard or you want to talk about the monitor? Choice is up to you. Let's see what the consensus is here. We're going to go, and I'm going to monitor right here in the chat, and we're going to see. And monitor, let's see, I think we've got a couple of different monitors that we still have left, right? We've got the ROG Swift PG27AQN, which is, of course, a 1440p 360 hertz monitor. And then we also still have the ROG Swift PG32UQXE, which is going to be our 32-inch 4K high refresh rate HDR 1000 gaming monitor. So they're both awesome, or we can talk about the keyboard. So let's see. Looks like monitor. Oh, okay. Monitors win. All right. So keyboard lost out. We're still going to talk about the keyboard as opposed to not talking about it at all. But we are going to go ahead. The community wins. So we're going to go ahead and jump to a monitor. So let me go ahead and bring up this monitor here. So give me 1 second. All right, here, guys. So let's go ahead and get this guy up right here. Okay, so give me 1 second here. All right, got everything I need there. Cool. All right, perfect. So this is going to be the ROG Swift 360 PG27AQN gaming monitor. So this is a really crazy special monitor because a lot of people, when we first announced it, without even kind of looking into it, literally just thought, oh, this is a 360 hertz 1080p monitor. But we already have a 360 hertz 1080p monitor. No, this is pretty cool because this is actually even a further evolution than the current ROG Swift 1440p 240 hertz monitor. So this is going to be, again, where we're really pushing with the world's first 360 hertz 1440p monitor. So you're going to have 2560 by 1440 resolution at 360 hertz. So this is absolutely just a super high performance based display. So again, yeah, this is going to be the ROG Swift 360 hertz PG27AQN 1440p based display, right? It is truly an impressive base display. So the big thing, of course, is really going to be the feature set that you have here. I think collectively, right, it's not going to just be an aspect of the 1440p resolution that you're going to have, but it's that ultra high refresh rate that you're going to have. You have the native G-Sync FPGA based processor that's in there. That's fantastic for you actually being able to have really the best overall experience when it comes to motion handling and overall artifact handling. There's also really some critical elements in terms of actually the way that the actual panel has been designed on this monitor that are super important. When we talk actually about even producing an ultra fast display in terms of response and motion clarity, there's actually a lot of different challenges that go into developing this type of panel. And we do have some really good information that's actually detailed in here. But what you actually see that's broken down in this actually video is going to be that we essentially have spent time to design and develop the actual liquid crystal substrate, right? And so when we talk actually about how this has actually been influenced, we actually had to change the actual composition, and the composition had to be affected in a few different ways in terms of not only improving its overall operating parameters, but even things like the viscosity. These things actually allowed us to essentially drive that liquid crystal substrate more efficiently and quicker. So this is actually what allows us to have even faster processing. So when we talk about this, it's really not just going to be the key parameter of, let's just saying that the display supports, low response and high refresh rate and high resolution. When we actually talk about measuring panels in terms of how they work, this ultra fast IPS, it's important to understand that it's different than traditional, even fast IPS displays that we've already had. When we talk about generally displays that are out there, VA can actually still be faster along with TN than IPS. So this type of design implementation is really helping to push IPS to even a faster experience than the best IPSs that we've been able to put out on the market. So this is really exciting that when we talk about the total experience when you talk about kind of the responsiveness, it's really kind of from a ground up redesign perspective in terms of not only the liquid crystal substrate design, but then also another really cool element is going to be what's called the way that the actual panel is driven. So right here, you'll see this is a really good kind of detail of it when we talk about actually a single layer driving design, which will actually drive it from only one corner to another corner. But in a dual layer actually design, it's actually driven simultaneously from each corner. And this actually allows the panel to be actually much quicker and much more responsive. So we add that together, right? All those things. And this is really what is going to be a super exciting panel, I think, for users that not only care about image quality, color accuracy, response. For me, it probably is maybe the most exciting monitor that we're going to have in 2022 because I think it hits so many key parts. I'm a huge fan of HDR though, so I really love high-grade HDR gaming. It's super immersive and super exciting and really dynamic when you can experience it. But short of that, this really does give you just an extraordinary level of features that are on there. This monitor also will come with the integrated NVIDIA reflex support. So that means you can directly plug in your mouse, which you can see right here would be a mouse like the ROG Chakram or the Gladius, any number of our other mouses that support this, where you can see all the actual display chain latency information rendered to you on screen. And the cool thing is that you can make all your adjustments in game and really be able to get that best experience to dial everything in so you get the best experience possible. Before, it was hard to know when you made different changes, you made different adjustments, how that was actually affecting latency, right? So it's cool to be able to see that information all mapped out on screen. This monitor will also have support for our C-clamp mount. So if you guys are not aware, we did release the ROG desk mount kit. I can actually show you what that looks like. Give me 1 second here, guys. I'll bring up an image of it. I might actually have it. Hold on. An ACL mount. Yeah. Yeah, I've got some images right here. So this monitor will be compatible with this desk mount kit, which actually we actually have it available right now for a wide range of our ROG monitors. And I believe this one should come included with it in the box. I'll double check on the specifications, but I think this desk mount kit will come included in there. So it's cool because you can have the traditional stand or you can have the C-clamp mount right here. So you can see the C-clamp mount goes in there. It gives you a really nice way to be able to integrate it really cleanly into your desk environment situation. And it still actually has our ergonomic adjustment options because it's built into the way that our stand's been designed. So I like this actually more than having to have the complexity of a monitor arm, but of course you still have VESA mount support if you want to use that. So it's really kind of entirely up to you. Oh, fantastic. Hey, yeah, Connor. So thanks for giving your feedback. So Connor right there is letting us know he's been using the desk mount kit for about a week. He loves it. It's really clean. It's really high quality. So he's really loving the experience. This monitor does not support Thunderbolt. Most of the time, really, the only monitors that we're going to have that have integrated Thunderbolt is going to be our ProArt series monitors, because we generally find that the only people that are using Thunderbolt are going to be professional content creators or prosumers that might be connecting things like ultra high speed external storage devices or NASs or things along those lines, right? I don't know if it's available in Australia. You'd have to check with ASUS Australia in your region. So with this stream, we generally only cover ASUS North America. I know there's a lot of people that we have that actually check out the stream from all parts of the world. But in terms of pricing and availability, I can't tell you if it's available in your region because sometimes different regions will carry different products and they also have different MSRPs. This was a global product launch though, so I can tell you that it is available in other parts of the world, but specifically whether it's out in Australia, I don't know. But it only recently started getting out even in North America, really in about the last month or so. So it might not just may necessarily be available yet, as of yet, in Australia. Okay, but you guys can see right here, this is pretty much the way it works. These are all the monitors that currently it supports, but it is a great option to just be able to kind of simplify your setup. But of course, really what we're talking about here is going to be the monitor. So let me get back to the monitor, right? I just wanted to show you guys that it does actually support that. So that is going to be a really great option. So as opposed to just using the traditional stand, you also do have that C-clamp mount design, right? So in addition to that, you'll also see that you, of course, have 3 HDMI 2.0 ports. You've got the traditional display port connection right there and an integrated USB hub as well. So the hub is going to give you a lot of flexibility. So all the way around, it's going to really be, I think, a fantastic monitor in terms of kind of all the core features and functions that you could really ask for, right? In terms of giving you a monitor that really kind of gives you all those specs. And again, this right here, like I said, the dual voltage design in terms of how the monitor is being driven in terms of that liquid crystal display, the refinement that we made to the liquid crystal substrate material, the positioning of the actual internal composition elements within that, and then everything else really goes forth that this is really going to be an awesome monitor. So this is going to be the ROG Swift PG27AQN. So 1440p, 360 hertz. Fantastic option. So let me go ahead and link this into the chat. And I would strongly recommend that you guys check out those little videos right there. And you can see that. In terms of full specifications, we don't have the full specification list to break down for you guys as of yet. So things in terms of like, specific response and other pieces like that, make sure to just go ahead and keep it tuned. And you guys will be able to get all the kind of specific information in that regard. So watch out for that in the not too distant future. Hey, Rajesh, thanks for your feedback. We actually are aware that there's people that were really sad that we did end of life the actual ROG terminal, but we are looking at a future possible replacement for the terminal. No specific timeline requirement right now. Excuse me, no specific timeline that I can disclose right now, but it is something under design development that we are looking at, okay? Yep, very cool. I think agreed. It does look very cool. No pricing as of yet for, like I said, that the ROG Fusion headsets, okay? All right, so that gets the monitor, one of our monitors, out of the way right there. So let's go ahead and get ready to jump into our next product right here. So we let the community voice their opinion on what they were interested in. How about let's go ahead and do that again. So let's see right here. What's next? We can do either the ROG Rapture, the GT-AXE 16000, so the world's first quad band gaming router with 2.5G and 10G based networking, quad core processor on there, or we can talk about the ROG Strix Flare II gaming keyboard. Which one's it going to be, guys? What do you think? The ROG Gaming Rapture gaming router, or we're going to talk about our ROG Strix Flare II gaming keyboard? Which one's it going to be? Go ahead and let me know in the comments. We'll give you 5 seconds to decide. Let's see. Oh, Rayu says the router. Michael says the keyboard. Mr. Samak says the keyboard. Oh, I think I'm going to give it one more second. Oh, 3. All right, Dalton makes it the keyboard. We're going to go with the ROG Strix Flare. So let's get ready, and we're going to talk about the keyboard. All right, guys. So let me go ahead and bring this guy up right here. So I'm going to go ahead and show you guys an image first here of this keyboard. So give me 1 second. And we will bring this up here. And I'm going to bring up the product page also here in a moment, and we'll run through it. Okay, sorry about that, guys. Okay, so we're going to go and jump in here into the ROG Strix Flare. All right. So this has been, I think, a long-awaited base design. I think a lot of people have been pretty excited about this keyboard in terms of its overall kind of design, in terms of just an update to it, right? A lot of people really like the actual volume screen, the volume wheel design, right? And as far as the actual kind of full design on how we kind of implemented the top cover and different pieces like that. But here, I think we really upped the ante in a lot of different ways. Hey, Dead BC77. We did actually talk about a couple of monitors. We still have one left. We're going to be talking about the ROG Swift PG32UQXE, which we still have to cover. We just talked about the ROG Swift 360 PG27AQN. And of course, we did cover at the very top of the show the ROG Swift OLED monitors with the 42-inch and the 48-inch, right? Hey, Kobrak, I'm just seeing your comment right now, so I'm not sure if you had a comment. Feel free to go ahead and let me know what it is, and I'll see if I can go ahead and follow up. But If you guys take a look right here, this is going to be a full-size keyboard, right? You will see right there that it does have an integrated hardware knob. It does actually have an adjustment switch right here, 2 quick access buttons right there. This is going to be one of the big differences right here, which is the Animate matrix-based display, which if some of you are familiar, it does actually give you some ability to customize this to a very high degree where you could have visualization, you could have actually stat information, you can have a lot of things right there that'll be here on the keyboard. We then have our ROG NX switches, which are going to be a really fantastic set of switches. But this keyboard will also support hot swap design. And right here, brand new at the bottom, is the ROG Diffusion light bar. So let's go ahead and take a closer look at the actual product page. We're going to show you all the cool things about this keyboard because it is really sweet in terms of all the new additions that we have on this keyboard. And again, I will go over the differences between the Animate and the standard model because there are going to be 2 versions of this. There's going to be the ROG Strix Flare II Animate and then just the ROG Strix Flare II. So there will be 2 versions of this keyboard, okay? So let me see right there. There we go. Okay. So here we go. ROG Strix Flare II. Let me go ahead and remove this, guys, so you can see this a little bit more clearly. So this you will see is, of course, this is a mechanical gaming keyboard. The Animate matrix display right there that you see. 8,000 hertz polling rate, which, of course, pairs up with the ROG Chakram X, which also features an 8,000 hertz polling rate as well. The ROG mechanical switches right here, these NX switches, you can find out actually about them more. I'll give a link there in the chat for them, but these are essentially our new in-house design switches. The difference that they have between our ROG RX switches, the RX switches, I think I personally prefer them a little bit more because they're actually even more smooth and they have better stability, but that's just because of a four-point stem design that they have, and they're also optical based, right? So they're going to even be faster. The NX switches, though, take upon a lot of the feedback that people had on traditional Cherry MX switches and kind of fine-tune them to improve things like force actuation and the reset point to, I think, be in alignment with what the community is really looking for. They have tighter tolerances in terms of their production, so they have more consistency across all the switches on the keyboard. And then they still maintain standard interoperability with stems. So if you want to replace the keycaps, you can replace the keycaps. So that is going to be the benefit of the ROG NX switch versus the ROG RX switches that we have on our optical-based keyboards, okay? You will see swappable-based switches. This is a big thing. This is pretty much one of the really first keyboards on the market from kind of key gaming keyboard manufacturers that are using swappable switches. Most of the kind of manufacturers that are doing swappable switch design are, I'd say, not kind of a little bit more in those niche spaces, right? So it's exciting for us, and it's definitely the first ROG keyboard and ASUS keyboard that we've offered that has the ability to customize the actual switches where you can remove them and you can change them out. I'm a really big fan of the Aquaglide switches. Those, I really like the way that those feel if you're looking for a recommendation, although these ROG NX switches, like I said, that already come with it are quite nice. The metal media controls and the wrist rest. So let's go through some of these points right here. So the first thing right here you're going to see is, of course, the beautiful per RGB lighting, the Animate matrix display, and then, of course, the included wrist rest, right? Now, if we go ahead and maybe check out this video, you're going to see some of the cool elements that are in there, right? And I can link the video, so I'll just go ahead and flow along. Here, I want to actually show some of the cool animations. So you can here see this is where you can actually customize the animations that are on this, right? But you can see right here, you could have system information. So you could have different readout items that you could have right there, right? Which is pretty cool. So you can see like a utilization right there. You can see time. You can have setting indicators, so things like raising the volume, lowering the volume, play and pause support, which is pretty cool. Audio visualization, if you're playing back kind of music and things like that. General animations. So you can see that you can customize the Animate matrix in quite a number of different ways, right? So really kind of the choice is up to you in terms of what you want to be able to do with it. All right. Now, one of the other things too right here is going to be that the Strix Flare II Animate does come included with the wrist rest, but the wrist rest is cool because you'll see right here is that this actually portion already does have an RGB light bar, so that you actually do get a really cool lighting effect right here. But normally when you've put a wrist rest on, it actually loses the diffusion. You don't have the lighting anymore. So the cool thing is that the wrist rest still gives you the actual RGB lighting diffusion. So you'll still have this RGB lighting design on the wrist rest, even when you add it there. So that's kind of a really cool design element, right? So is that you can have RGB lighting, by default, but then you add the wrist rest and you still get the RGB lighting. Okay. Here you can, of course, see the hardware level controls for things like volume. And then you can also have the adjustment, right, where you could see, you could toggle things like previous track, skip track, right? You can customize this within the, of course, the Armature Create software. You can also see that there's a touch button right here for play and pause. So you got play and pause, skip and previous track, and then volume control and audio mute, right? So you push this down or you scroll up and down for volume, right? And then you also have 2 other function keys right here, along with all your traditional other keys that are right there. Sorry, give me 1 second, guys. Let me just see if we got any other questions that are popping up right there. Yes, we'll be talking about mini LED monitor in a little bit. That'll be for the ROG Swift PG32UQXE. Okay. Hey, Masar, I don't know if we're going to have any more ROG figures or anything like that, but you know, we have kind of been continuing to offer some of these models over time. So we recently had, of course, 7, I think was the most recent introduction, and that came included for a limited period with the Z11 chassis. Whether we come out with some of the other characters that we have, like Go or Omni, PKD or anything like that, Akira, you know, you'll just have to kind of make sure to keep it tuned, right? And we'll see what happens, right? But definitely we're going to continue to want to evolve in terms of all the different kind of features that, the different characters and the different types of items that we're going to be offering to our community. So it's definitely a possibility that you might see more. Let me go ahead and give you guys a link right here to the ROG Strix Flare. And I think I've got a couple other images too to be able to share with it as well. There we go. So yeah, this is, here's the cool part right here. So let me go ahead and get this opened up. So you can see right here, here's your kind of standard Cherry MX switches, and we have the ROG NX switches. So you can actually go and you can find out more information specifically in terms of kind of the actuation, the initial force, and the total force. Initial force, right, along with kind of the rebound feedback, those are important points in terms of how we've customized the actual NX-based switches. And like I said, the other big point is going to be the actuation point, and also the consistency. A lot of people don't realize that you actually have production deviation when you make any type of mechanical switch. So when you actually are producing a switch, right? And when you're producing that switch, there's going to be essentially a certain amount of deviance from one switch to another switch to another switch to another switch, right? So you can actually have, let's say, a switch on the keyboard, one here and another one here, and they can actually operate a little bit differently. And that just comes through normal production. Now you can tighten that up, but it does actually add more complexity and cost to the production process because you're essentially having to fine tune binning the consistency of those switches. We did that when we actually produced the switches for our ROG gaming mice, our ROG micro switches. They have a very tight deviation so that the actual consistency between the left and the right switch are very tight. And that's the same thing that's also been applied with the ROG NX switches on the keyboard. So a lot of touch typists will really appreciate that because you're going to feel a more consistent experience. Some users in the custom switch world, what they end up having to do is they have to kind of lubricate and film all their switches to try to have them be a little bit more consistent because of that regard. But that's really one of the nice things already about the NX switches is they have a more consistent experience across the board. So that I think is a pretty cool design element that we do have. So hopefully that gives you a little bit better understanding in that regard, right? So here we can see actually a closer sign of the keyboard, and I'm going to go through some of the aspects in terms of how the keyboard has been designed for hot swap customization, and also taking some community feedback, I think, in terms of the acoustic considerations that people have been kind of thinking about for a keyboard. This is going to be a wired keyboard. If you're looking for wireless, we have the Claymore 2, and we have the RG Falchion. Those are both 2 great wireless keyboard options. Hey, Lee Findley. I definitely wouldn't agree with that. I think that we actually work extensively with our community. I think you'll find people here on the stream that find, especially within the PCDIY group, that the reason why, you know, we even have that group is because we're focused on engaging with our users, collecting feedback, being able to provide them insight in how to have a better experience with their products, whether it's with guide, whether it's helping with troubleshooting experience. Well, definitely the reality is that people can run into problems and they can run into challenges. It's impossible to make 100% of your products perfect every single time and have every single experience be great, especially within, I think, an open platform ecosystem when you talk about so many variables that can occur, from operating system related issues to installation based issues to a user experience and so many other factors. We definitely, I still think, are committed to trying to ensure the best experience possible. And again, like I told somebody else, if you have specifics that you really want to share outside of just general criticism, feel free to send me actually detailed insight that you have. And at a minimum, regardless of whatever your current stance is with ASUS, I'm always interested in finding out about that information so that I can relay it over to our teams internally so that we can hopefully improve upon that. You can email me at pcdiy@asus.com. Okay. So let me go ahead and move this on here. So you guys can see right here that in terms of the actual overall keyboard design, one of the things right here that we've gone ahead and added in is going to be this sound dampening foam. So this is something really you don't see in any type of traditional gaming-based keyboard. And really the kind of feedback from some users is that there can be pinging that can sometimes happen when you hit the keys, right? And they internally are making kind of contact with internal portions of the actual cavity. Some people, tonality is very a kind of personal thing. Not everybody cares about this. Some people don't even notice it. Some people actually prefer some tones more so than other tones. But this sound dampening helps to essentially just mitigate essentially that type of pinging that you might hear. And for some people, they prefer kind of a smoother, softer kind of sound experience. So that is what you have here in terms of that sound dampening foam. PBT double shot keycap. So that essentially just means really durable keycap construction. The main benefit is going to be that you have better resistance against things like dust, debris, oil, dander, things along those lines. And that also your legends are not going to fade out over time, right? So that's going to be another premium point. Generally, most gaming keyboards don't come with PBT double shot keycaps. You would have to purchase them. So that is going to be a premium thing. The ROG switch stabilizers, we have also gone ahead and redesigned these stabilizers to have a far more consistent and really smooth experience. So I know some of previous stabilizer designs, the keys might have felt well, but in certain of the actual kind of for certain of the other kind of portions which had a stabilizer, there might be a little bit more warble or variability to it. And some users in the custom mechanical keyboard world go to a really high degree to be able to stabilize that, improve that. So this is going to be another area that we've improved upon that. And then you can see in the swappable switches right here, the PCB does sort a hot swap switch design. So that means you can actually remove those switches and you can try different switches out. So in the past, ultimately, you were kind of limited to where if your keyboard originally came with clicky switches as opposed to linear switches, as opposed to tactile switches, then you were stuck. But now you can change them out. If you want to go with linears, if you want to go with tactile, if you want to go with clicky, if you want to try different linears out, which there are literally, like tons of linear switches. There's literally, I myself probably from, trying different linear switches, I probably maybe have like, I don't know, 15 different types of linear switches. I generally prefer linears. I've got a couple of tactile and a couple of clicky switches, right? But there's a lot of different types of switches that you can try out on the market if you want to customize, right? But this is going to be one of the key aspects of this keyboard. And then down at the bottom right here, you can also see the RGB light bar, which has this really nice diffusion. And again, remember that with this design, if we go back up to the top right here, the diffusion would still occur if you do add the actual wrist rest. So in either configuration, you still get that really nice RGB light bar that's on there. Okay. And I think we did missed it, but this model, remember, does also come included with the new microcontroller in there that does support the 8,000 hertz polling rate, right? Of course, you have the RGB LED lighting support within ASUS Aura Sync within the Armory Crate software. And you're also going to, of course, be able to go in and customize, of course, the Animate Matrix display, as well as also, of course, all the elements for even more advanced kind of per LED lighting control through the Aura Creator software. So Aura Creator is really cool if you want to be able to have like individual sequence patterns, maybe the top row, one color vibrating in one kind of way, and then maybe in the middle you wanted something else, and then the bottom you want entirely different. That's what you can do with Aura Creator. The smart mode, I also tell you, is kind of cool. Some people don't know you can do this, but you can actually have your temperature reflected in RGB lighting, which is kind of cool. If you really cared about your temperatures, you can do that. And last but not least, you got standard things like fully integrated onboard memory. So that's for onboard memory profiles. You, of course, have a USB pass-through, on-the-fly macro recordings, and excuse me, and also you are going to have hardware level lighting control. So right here, if you actually notice, it says mode light, mode light. You don't even actually have to have installed Armoury Crate to be able to change the lighting modes on the keyboard. So if you didn't want to run, you know, the software just to be able to change some of the lighting patterns, you can still access a large number of the lighting patterns in different modes by doing it directly hardware level on the keyboard. So the keyboard does offer hardware level lighting control on a hardware level, so with no software actually even installed. Okay, so that is the ROG Strix Flare II Animate. I'm now just going to show you the difference between the standard version, essentially the non-Animate, and the Animate, and I will double check to see if there's any questions. So give me 1 second right here. We have no plans right now for our white model, but we do already have our Moonlight White keyboard. So the ROG Strix Scope in white, which is a fantastic looking keyboard. If you do want to go that route, let me see. I think I might have it right here. Yep. I have it right here. This is the ROG Strix Scope keyboard in white. This is a great looking keyboard. It also has full RGB lighting. So we do already offer this model right here if you do want to have a keyboard in white. Okay. All right, so let me go ahead and just bring up right here the Flare 2 non-Animate so you guys can see the difference here, okay? All right, perfect. All right, I got them both up right here. Hey, Shannon, happy to have you here, man. Happy New Year. Good 2022 to you. In terms of the color is going to be the same for both models, the Flare 2 or the Flare 2 Animate. They're both going to be exactly the same, okay? All right, so let's go ahead and show you right here the differences between the two. So let me go ahead and just remove this banner right here, guys. Okay, so you can see this is going to be the standard Flare 2, and this will be the Flare 2 Animate. Of course, the Flare 2 Animate will be more expensive because the Flare 2 Animate will come with the RGB diffused light wrist rest, right? So to have that kind of little light bar there within the wrist rest, where you can see right here on the Flare 2, it does not have the RGB diffused light bar that's in there. The other one will be right here is that this model, of course, has the Anime Matrix display, which is built in, right? But that does not exist here on the standard Flare. So the standard Flare has kind of pretty much the similar prior design, okay? The other one is going to be that this model does feature the hot swap design, right? So if we remember, if we go all the way down here, let's go the hot swap design. When we talked about, yeah, I think it's right here. The swappable switch design, this is exclusive on the Animate. It is not on the standard Flare 2. The standard Flare 2 only comes with the ROG NX switches. So you would pick whichever ROG NX switches you want, okay? So that is going to be the other difference. It still does come with the sound dampening foam that's on this model. So you still actually get the foam. You still get the switch stabilizers. You still get the 8,000 hertz polling rate. You get the USB pass-through. You get, of course, the media controls, the hardware level controls, the integrated hardware level lighting, all those other great features and functions that are on this unit. But those are going to be the key differences between the Animate and the Animate 2, okay? Let me go ahead and put those guys there into the chat for you guys if anybody wants to check those out. And I will go ahead and send the other link in there right there. Okay, so that should hopefully give you those two different models. And I'll also see if I can put the link in chat right here if anybody wants to check out a little bit more information regarding the ROG NX switches. So that will give you a little bit more information that if you kind of want to see what the difference is in terms of the ROG NX switches, then you can, since you check out this little site, it'll show you actually the differences in terms of the design, their features, and kind of everything that goes along with that. Hey Lex, so we're going to be talking actually about the ROG Swift PG32UQX in a little bit. Okay, so that'll be our new 32-inch monitor that will be a mini LED monitor, HDMI 2.1, high refresh rate, 4K. A lot of really cool things about that. So we'll be talking about that guy in a little bit. Okay. Okay, so that wraps up everything there on the ROG Strix Flare II. So if anybody has any questions, lastly, and before I get ready to move on to the next one, let me know and we will go ahead and answer those. If not, we will keep moving it along to our next product right here. And I'll see if I can get feedback on what kind of everybody's opinion or thoughts might be in terms of what the next product is that we're going to go ahead and take a look at. Actually, hold on. I got a couple of images right here. Let me just go ahead and show you guys a couple of these just close-up images, which I think do a good job to show lastly the flare here before we move it along. So give me 1 second right here. I just found these right there that I had. So again, here you can just see a little bit closer up. That's going to be the play and the pause. This is the skip track function. Then right here you have the volume and the mute, and then you've got two more quick access keys that are right there. Those are going to be the improved ROG stabilizers that we have, right, for really smooth actuation and consistency. That's the USB pass-through support, which is really nice, again, for attaching whatever type of device that you want right there. That's cool to be able to have that integrated within the keyboard. Of course, you got that premium braided cable, and that's what also is going to be connected directly to the keyboard and the new microcontroller, which gives you the 8K polling rate support. I didn't talk about it right there, but there you can see, of course, the adjustment option there for, for just being able to adjust it based on your preference for ergonomics. Here you can see a little bit of the design. This is on the standard model. So again, you can see right here, there's no Animate Matrix display, whereas the actual Animate model does have the Animate Matrix display there in its place. And you'll also see that there's no RGB light bar on the standard model, right? Where on the Animate model, you do have the RGB light bar. All right, there's the sound dampening foam, which is actually built into the unit, right? Which, like I said, will help to reduce pinging and give you an overall softer and overall better audible experience when using the keyboard, especially when really heavily hitting on those keys. Here you can see it lit up, and this does light up so that you guys do know that this section does actually have illumination. You do have that wrist rest that's included with the standard model, again, though it just doesn't have the illumination there. And here you can see lit up the difference between the two. This is the Animate and this is the standard, right? And here you can see the Animate Matrix. And we talked about on the Animate Matrix right here, you can change this to music visualization, animations, stat readout, a lot of different values, right? Function representation. So like if you play or pause a track, you can actually see that affirmed through the actual Animate Matrix, right? And you'll also see right here, the RGB diffuse light bar right there, where again, no RGB light bar that's on there. So that, I think, is all the images. Oh, no, there's just an internal shot of the entirety of the actual foam that we have internally there inside of the keyboard. Okay, yeah, that shows all the images that I wanted to show there. Okay, so let's get ready. Let's go to the next product right here. And let's see, we'll let everybody decide as well for the next product right here. So we talked about the ROG Swift OLED PG42UQ and the PG48UQ. So those are ROG Swift OLED monitors. We talked about the ROG Chakram S wired and wireless gaming mouse. We talked about the ROG Fusion 300 and 500 gaming headsets. We talked about the ROG Strix Flare II Animate and ROG Strix Flare II gaming keyboards. So next, we've got either the ROG Rapture GT-AXE 16000, the ROG Swift 360 PG27AQN, right? Oh, excuse me. We talked about the ROG Swift 360 PG32UQXE. So we have either the ROG Rapture GT-AXE 16000, or we can do the ROG Swift PG32UQXE, or the ROG Loki SFX power supplies, or the ROG Rapture GT-AX 11000 Pro. So what is going to be the feedback from people in the community? We also have, lastly, a quick recap on actually some new motherboards that we had with the ROG Strix B660-I, which is a mini ITX, new mini ITX board. The B660-A, which is going to be a white ATX-based board. And the ROG RYUJIN 2 360, which is pretty much almost like what you see right here. It's just going to natively come with RGB fans, but we can touch those at the end. So let me know what you guys think. What's the next product that we should talk about? We got power supply. So the Loki PG32UQXE, it looks like the AXE 16000 power supply. Loki. Oh, I think 32-inch monitor. Oh my gosh, I don't know. I don't know what. Okay, it looks like we got a little bit of everybody. All right. I think Lex is fishing. All right, we're gonna go ahead. We're gonna talk about the Loki, and then we're gonna talk about the ROG Swift. The ROG Swift PG32UQXE. Okay, let's go ahead and do it that way, guys. So let's go ahead and let me get the images for the Loki up here, and we will get ready to move this along here. So give me 1 second. Okay. So these are going to be a new addition for us. We have not previously offered an SFX-based power supply. So for those of you that are pretty much not aware of kind of like what an SFX-based power supply is, these are going to be more compact, essentially smaller power supplies that are generally kind of more suited for very compact-based builds, so mini ITX-based builds, maybe some micro ATX, maybe very compact ATX-based builds in a very compact-based chassis. But ultimately, they are a much more compact, smaller power supply than a traditional ATX-based power supply. That's the reason why they have a different designation as an SFX-based power supply. Specifically, these are SFX-L based power supplies, so they're a little bit larger than the smallest SFX based power supplies. But we are doing some pretty cool stuff in terms of the overall design for these power supplies, and on top of that, offering really some unprecedented levels. So we will be offering the world's first SFX-L 1200 watt based power supply. So that's pretty crazy in terms of the overall range that we're going to be offering. And I think we will offer 4 models, or actually maybe a total of 5 models. But give me 1 second right here. I'm going to see if I can bring up the images right here and get these up for you guys. So give me 1 second and load this up here. Okay. And where's the link right here that I have for the Loki? All right, here we go. All right, got them loaded up for you guys. So this is going to be our ROG Loki series PSUs. So here you guys can see, this is going to be the ROG Loki series PSUs. Like I said, designed for small form factor, fully modular based power supplies. The flagship model will be 1200 watt and be a titanium class rated base power supply. The other models will all be platinum in terms of the overall rating. These are also going to be exciting in terms of that these models will support PCI Gen 5 readiness with the PCI Gen 5 cable included inside of the box. You will have a fully synchronized ASUS or RGB lighting support. So there'll actually be a special header right here, like our Thor series power supplies, which would connect to the motherboard, which will actually allow this RGB lighting to be synced with the motherboard or be able to be controlled through ASUS or Armory Crate. You'll also see a little bit of RGB lighting illumination right here on the side. So you've got our axial tech-based fans to be able to offer really, really great thermal performance and thermal efficiency within these models right here. It's also going to offer you the same type of kind of design focus that we have in kind of our traditional power supplies, where the internal topology, we really kind of look at the overall heatsink composition to be able to offer higher grade heatsink mass. So generally it's going to be 2x the kind of average to be able to have much larger heatsinks, which gives you lower operating temperatures and overall better efficiency from those lower temperatures. So fully modular PCI Gen 5 readiness support. Like I said right here, I think it'll show you 1200 watt is going to be the flagship model with an 80 plus titanium certification. And then the rest of the models will be 80 plus platinum. And you can see right there, 1200 watt, 1000 watt, 850 watt, and a 750 watt. So those are going to be all the different models that we'll have in terms of the Loki based power supplies that we'll have. And you can see right here is that the PCI Gen 5 ready support will come with the 16-pin PCI cable, which is going to be a benefit because that 16 pin PCI cable will support up to that 600 watts, which is again going to be really nice for more compact systems. If you have supporting based graphics cards, that one cable to be able to provide all that power to that GPU. Yeah, this is not what's called ATX 12VO. ATX 12VO is still something that we're kind of evaluating and looking at. And part of the reality is that there's still actually a lot of devices within a traditional system that actually use 5 volt and 3 volt. And if you wanted to bring the voltage regulation, it then would have to be handled on the motherboard, and it wouldn't necessarily be ideal. Consider even something like this with the RYUJIN 2, right? The actual fan and ARGB controller uses a SATA connector, and then to do that, you still need those other rails, right? And so there's a lot of other devices, especially in the RGB ecosystem, that aren't exclusively using 12 volts. So 12 volt VO doesn't really still right now have a lot of sensibility. It makes the most sense in kind of pre-built systems where you're kind of limiting maybe the extent of all the devices that are going to be integrated in that exclusively utilize that type of configuration. Otherwise, I think that for current kind of PCDIY ecosystem, still the kind of multi-rail based design that exists is kind of the most sensible in terms of giving you the most flexibility for all the different types of devices that are being utilized. Let me see right there if there's any other questions right there. Yeah. Hey, Jose, we actually have heard that feedback. Overall, it's not really a concern. We do know that some users have just that kind of preference. But, you know, power supply orientation, it really is variable depending even if you have a chassis that displays it or doesn't display it, whether it goes in an upside down or a right side up type of kind of orientation. We have actually evaluated kind of looking at that, and we are considering it for possible design revisions. But even if it actually was oriented in the upside down configuration, it wouldn't be of a consequence, especially because the thermal efficiency on the power supply is so good, and with those larger heat sinks that also providing native passively cooled airflow, passive based thermal dissipation. It's not really something to be concerned with, but we do know that there are some users that have a preference for that. So it is something that we have relayed to our design team for potential design revisions in future versions of our power supplies. Okay. We will be making, sorry, hold on. Where's that question right there? Are all these power supplies compatible with, I'm not sure which graphics cards you mean, Rayu. So if you can clarify, let me know. But that does go ahead and recap there the ROG, the ROG Loki SFX-based power supplies that we will be coming out with in the not too distant future. So I think now I've made you wait long enough. I think Lex, I know that you want to talk about this monitor. So let's get ready to jump into the ROG Swift PG32UQXE. And talk about really maybe for many one of the dream monitors that is going to be out there in terms of its overall specifications. So I think actually a lot of the monitors we talked about for a lot of people are really going to be kind of dream monitors, right? I mean, we talked about the ROG Swift OLED, which a lot of people have been waiting on. Then we talked about the ROG Swift PG27AQN, so that 360 hertz 1440p ultra fast display monitor. That's a really exciting monitor. But then there's a lot of people that even want something bigger and also specifically really want to take advantage of HDR, and they also want 4K resolution, and that's where this monitor comes in. Now, we already have some really amazing 4K high refresh rate gaming monitors and even mini LED. Our current flagship is going to be the ROG PG32UQXE, right? And that monitor actually still does have certain benefits compared to this monitor because it actually has more zones and even a higher peak brightness. But collectively, in terms of the overall design, there may be some aspects that some users overall maybe prefer on this monitor compared to the UQX. And also from the perspective that this will be a lower cost monitor than the UQX, because generally the more complex that you go in terms of the backlighting, for the higher the brightness and the more zones, it just inherently increases the cost and the complexity of the monitor. So more zones, more brightness, it's always going to lead to a more expensive base monitor. So hitting a balance in terms of those specifications along with everything else is really a challenging part of high-end monitor production. But I think for a lot of people, this does really give a lot of the kind of those key specifications in the right spaces that a lot of enthusiasts are really going to be excited about. So let's go ahead and talk about this guy right here, the ROG Swift PG32UQXE. So what do we've got? Well, the first thing is going to be that this is going to be a 4K based monitor. So this is going to be high resolution. It's going to be a 32-inch base panel, so 4K at 32 inches, and it will feature a mini LED full array local backlight zipping, full array backlight implementation, so an FALD. So this is going to have 576 zones, and it will also be rated for a HDR performance rating of HDR 1000, which HDR 1000 along with mini LED and full array local backlight dimming is really going to be a great experience for HDR. HDR 600 can be pretty good in terms of still giving you some really nice punch and dynamic range. But if you really kind of want to experience a high level of HDR immersion, you really want to see that contrast, that dynamic range, the brightness that really can offer a high level of saturation and really just an really impressive experience when you're gaming, you really want to target for 1000, if not even higher than that. And so here with the mini LED, the full array local dimming, and then of course that HDR 1000 rating, you get all of those things combined together to really be able to, I think, give you a great gaming experience. So I think this is going to be really kind of a well-rounded monitor for people that are into first-person shooters, action RPG, racing, indie platformer. It doesn't matter, especially with the auto HDR technology that Microsoft is implementing in with Windows 11, where even more games are going to have HDR-based support automatically. This is going to allow for a whole nother level, but there's already quite a number of really great games that give you an amazing HDR experience that have natively been supported. Again, going back here, 4K, 32 inches, mini LED, full array local backlight. This is a native G-Sync module implementation. So this is G-Sync Ultimate. So what do we mean by native G-Sync? So it is important to understand that we have, of course, a wide range of monitors that are G-Sync compatible, and then there is G-Sync Ultimate. G-Sync Ultimate means that it has to have the NVIDIA G-Sync FPGA processor in there. That FPGA processor is quite advanced. It's very fast. It actually has fast DDR memory that's built into it, multiple gigs of DDR memory that built into it, because it actually has to have overdrive compensation handling. And that overdrive compensation handling will directly translate into better motion clarity, better artifact handling, and overall better experience. It's hard for some people because some people just purely think of kind of like G-Sync from the perspective of like no screen tear, which that's one metric, but it's not the only metric, especially when you're talking about motion clarity processing and overdrive handling, which is important in terms of really talking about motion clarity. So this is a critical part to really helping to have a monitor be able to be a great monitor from a gaming perspective, okay? So in addition to that element right there, right, where it is to have the dedicated G-Sync module in there. You also have the quantum dot layer there, which helps to give you really, really great quality color reproduction, along with really good color saturation that's in there. So that's also going to be an element. This does have an even a little bit higher refresh rate. This supports an overclockable refresh rate up to 160 hertz, so a little bit faster than even the ROG Swift PG UQX, which is going to be 144 hertz, right? And this model also does integrate the NVIDIA reflex analyzer support, so that again, if you pair it with one of our mice like our Gladius 3, our ROG Chakram, the upcoming ROG Chakram X, you get that. And for, of course, all those console gamers, or if you're on the PC side and you really got a penchant to want to use HDMI, you've got HDMI 2.1 in there, right? So that is going to be pretty much almost all the key specifications. Now, it is also important to note that this does benefit from a new type of panel technology here with AU Optics, who's been a very close partner with ASUS in terms of the design and development of many of our flagship gaming monitors, where we work closely with their R&D team and R&D team to fine-tune designs to really be able to kind of maximize performance and take things to the next level. So here we've got the AM LED panel technology, which has been designed specifically for mini LED to really be able to have an optimized experience in terms of its performance relative to also the production processes and the actual brightness ratings that you can have with a mini LED tech, right? So all those things tied together are really going to give you a great experience. And again, some people might offer, well, hey, you've got those OLED monitors, then why even get this? And again, really where mini LED shines is that it still offers significantly higher sustained and higher peak brightness rating than what is achievable within an OLED-based display. OLEDs are great for contrast, and contrast can be pretty good also on a mini LED-based display. But when we talk about peak brightness color saturation and dynamic range, that's really where mini LED is shining, is giving you that ability to punch to a much higher level, right? So again, we talked about here, what are some of those differences? The lighting zones on the current UQX are going to be higher. It's going to have more lighting zones as opposed to the 576 that are going to be on this model. And also the display HDR rating. The UQX supports a display HDR rating of 1400, while this is a display HDR rating of 1000, right? So outside of that, though, I think for many people, this is going to still be an extraordinarily well-spec'd monitor, and really a monitor that they're going to be happy about. And keep in mind, this is also still going to adhere to very, very high color quality and accuracy, where we're going to be doing, of course, optimization for the Delta E values to be under 2. So you're going to get great out-of-box color experience right out of the box with this monitor. Let me go ahead and see. Do we got any questions right there? Yeah, definitely. Eve is asking 160 frames on 4K. That's definitely only possible on PC. So I don't really think this is going to be a factor for console gamers. And even on console gaming, HDMI 2.1, which is often kind of cited by a lot of console gamers, is almost irrelevant, because most consoles that take advantage of high refresh rate are actually running their games at 1080p, or they're using some type of adaptive checkerboard type resolution or something like that. So it's actually like 120 hertz at 120 hertz at 1080p resolutions, and that can actually be achieved at with HDMI 2.0. So it's almost irrelevant to have HDMI 2.1, but it's nice to have a specification that gives you high bandwidth 4K natively at 120 hertz. It can be a benefit. So it's not that much of a factor, you know. Hey, Jose, no pricing yet, no pricing and no availability target for that. Like I said, this is general announcement, so just make sure to keep it tuned here. Hey, Lex, we're not talking about what peak variables might be other factors. When you talk about lightning brightness ratings, there's always going to be a difference between the display rating specification and then what you might have as far as being the sustained, the standard, and then even the peak, right? So take, for instance, like the UQX actually can even go higher than technically the 1400 that the display HDR standard is at. But that's somewhat irrelevant. I mean, it is relevant to some degree, but generally we want to go with what the target HDR specification is. And of course, as we get closer to the actual release, we'll have more complete formal specifications for you right now. But as of right now, the only specification that we want to openly disclose is going to be that HDR 1000, okay? I think it's midnight. Yes, we actually are already in the process of releasing the ROG Thor 2 PSU. We've talked about this actually in prior live streams and in our PCDIY group. So if you're not a member, join. But it is in the process of being rolled out in North America. The first model will be the 1000 watt, followed by the 1200 watt, the 1600 watt, and then last the 850 watt. Both those last two models probably closer to the very end of Q1, going into early Q2. The 1000 watt possibly by the end of this month in terms of channel availability, okay? Yes, in terms of this mouse, I am using this. This is the ROG Gladius 3. It's probably my overall favorite mouse that we offer in terms of our lineup, although I am a very big fan of the Chakram and the Spotha X, because I'm 6'2", I'm a bigger guy. I like mice that have a little bit more space, but this is a very good balance that I think it hits a lot of people, and I love the switches, the RG micro switches, and you can change between optical and standard switches. Great wireless, but also wired NVIDIA reflex, really nice body and weight ratio. But yes, the Gladius 3 is right now available. You can get this right now, both the wired and wireless model. Let me see if there's any other questions right there. Hey, Lee, I believe I told you, if you've got any feedback, feel free to go ahead and send it PCDIY@asus.com, okay? And I think that's about it that we see right there in terms of no curved monitors that we have right now. We do have a couple of recent curved monitors that we have already gone ahead and released, so you may want to check out some of our prior PCDIY streams over the last couple of weeks. You'll actually see generally in the description all the monitors that we have listed right there. Generally, most of the community focus that we see is actually not in curve. Curve generally tends to be most popular for a little bit larger sizes and sometimes more in the ultra wide segmentation. So I think the last curve that we looked at releasing was the XG30 series monitor, right? But all the monitors that we've talked about today are traditional in terms of they're all flat-based displays, okay? Correct. Sunday Superfly, no gaming, no ultra wide gaming monitors that we've announced. We have already gone ahead and released a couple recently, so it's it's not necessarily something that we've had to look at right now. Okay. All right. So I think that covers greetings. Yes, we're going to be talking about the actual gaming monitors here in a moment right now. So don't worry, we got you covered. Oh, microphone. This is the ROG Magnus, but it's no longer available. You can't get it anymore. So no point in me talking about it. Okay, so I think that covers us there. So you got the ROG Swift PG32UQXE. We talked about the ROG Loki SFX-based power supplies. So next, we've got the ROG Rapture series gaming routers. So I think I'm probably going to talk about both of these at the same time. We've got the ROG Rapture GT-AXE 16,000, and then we also have the ROG Rapture GT-AX 11,000 Pro. Both of these are going to be super high performance based gaming routers, pretty much flagship level based routers in terms of their overall features and specifications. So let's go ahead and jump into these guys routers. And let me also drop the link in here for the ROG Swift PG UQXE. Okay. So that is the link there for the UQXE. And let me go ahead and get the link open here for first the ROG GT-AX 16,000. And hold on one second here, guys. Okay, here we go. All right, got these. And let me see if I can show you both of these side by side, just so we can kind of see a little bit of kind of these two at the same time. Okay. And we'll see that they're a little bit different, but of course, their specifications are going to be more different. And we're going to get into all the specifics here in a little bit. But this is going to be right here, the ROG Rapture GT. Actually, let me do this right now. Let me get this up here in a moment. So this is going to be ROG Rapture GT gaming routers. Okay, so yeah, right here we've got, this is going to be the GT-AXE 16,000. So this is the world's first quad band based router. And then right here we're going to have the ROG Rapture GT-AX 11,000 Pro, which is going to be a tri-band based router, but it also is the first that we're releasing that has the new expanded 5 gigahertz spectrum, the Uni 4 spectrum with 5.9 gigahertz support. And we'll talk about actually how this all works out and why it's relevant and different things like that. The design difference is going to look very similar to the two though, but you'll see that here in terms of the lighting design, this has this really cool kind of multi-layered, kind of similar to the polymo design that we have on the latest ROG motherboards, where here you're going to see this a little bit more traditional, kind of the standard RGB lighting design that we have on our current AX 11,000 base model. AXE 11,000 model. So that's where you can kind of visually see a little bit of the difference. But of course, there'll be more differences in the hardware specification where, like I said, this is quad band and this is tri-band. This is also going to, of course, have a different level of network connectivity options with 2.5G and 10G based networking. And this is going to be a little bit different. So let's go ahead and bring up the specs here. We're going to dive into it and get into all the nitty and gritty here on these models. So let me bring this up here. So the first thing that I want to talk about a little bit here is going to just be helping to have a little bit understanding when we talk about speeds. So this is the AXE, of course, the AXE 16,000, right? And so that 16,000 megabits is a combination of the 4 different bands, right? So we have 4,800 megabits, which is going to be on the 6 gigahertz. And then we have also 4,800 megabits, which are going to be some of the other bands. And then you've got all the way down to the 2.4, which is going to be a little bit over 1,100 megabits. And when you put those all together, that's what gives you, quote unquote, the 16,000 aggregate, right? But the important thing is, one, that's a theoretical number. But the really important thing to keep in mind is that wireless, essentially, the speed diminishes the farther and farther you get away. So, if I just use this as a reference, if this was my quote unquote router, right? And this was, let's say, my client device. So this was, let's say, my laptop or my PC. When I'm here, let's say I could optimally get about 90% of the throughput speed. So if I was on one of the bands, theoretically, right, let's say I could have, I don't know, let's say 2000 megabits of real world throughput. That would be very high performance, right? Extremely high throughput, great, right? But as you move a little bit further away, it's all of a sudden going to go down to like 1800, and then it's going to all of a sudden go down to 1500, and then it's going to go down to 1000. By the time you maybe get to the furthest point in your house or your installation environment, you could have maybe dropped to like 300 megabits, which is still super fast, right? I mean, that's still 3 times faster than a 10100 Ethernet cable. And many people don't even have 100 megabits, ISP service provider. But that's where it's important to understand why that you essentially want more bandwidth, right? The bandwidth isn't only just about providing you super high speed for really great performance, really low latency, also being able to share amongst a wide number of devices, but it's also important that you want essentially a high bandwidth number in relation to what your ISP service is, so that hopefully even as you get to further and further points, you have sufficient speed to really get a great experience from that ISP provider, okay? So that is just one thing to kind of keep in mind when we're talking about kind of wireless connectivity and how that differs. Because of course, when we talk about distance, none of that comes into play when we're talking about distances when you're accounting for a hardline based connection. For a hardline based connection, of course, with a wire, it doesn't matter whether it's at 10 feet, whether it's at 25 feet, whether it's at 50 feet or 100 feet, a gigabit cable is going to provide you essentially 1000 megabits. It's going to be consistent across the entire range. With wireless, it's not. It's going to go down essentially the further that you get away. So that is part of the reason why when we have these faster and faster numbers, the main reason why you essentially want these faster numbers is to essentially be able to maintain very, very high speed, even at the furthest points away, while also having a lot of bandwidth, right, for multiple devices. Because of course, in a modern home, take for instance my home, I'm probably running close to maybe 40 plus wireless devices that are all actively connected at one time, right? So if you have a lot of those devices, depending on what they might be, some might be very basic, some might require more bandwidth, but you want to have a lot of wireless bandwidth so that all those devices can be served really well at one time. So this is the AXE 16,000. So let's go through a couple of key specifications. The first thing right there that we talked about is going to be that aggregate 16,000 megabits, right? It is also going to have essentially those 4 bands. So you're going to get that 6 gigahertz band, the Wi-Fi 6E, right? You're going to have the 2.5 gigahertz bands, and then you're also going to have 2.4. So that's a pretty big deal in terms of having 4 bands. And so you might wonder, well, why would I want to have maybe 4 bands? Well, the big benefit that you have is potentially actually pairing routers together. So the really cool thing is that for some users that want the absolute fastest wireless network, what they would do is they would take that Wi-Fi 6E band, or it could be the Wi-Fi 5 band. It depends on how they want to configure things resident to their network. But you would use that as what's called a wireless backhaul. So again, as an example, if this was a Wi-Fi 6E router, so the GT-AXE 16000, and this was another GT-AXE 16000, I could pair those two together through our AI mesh technology and use that Wi-Fi 6E connection to have both of those routers talk to each other. And that is an extremely big benefit, because that connection with Wi-Fi 6E, it's literally faster than a gigabit Ethernet cable. So that wireless connection allows you to have this ultra high speed connection between 2 routers that then, when that router is providing one big wireless signal, it has a really, really big pipe that it can share to those devices. And you still have those other bands, there's literally 3 other bands that could then be divided between all those other devices to still really be a really fast experience. If you wanted to go the other way around, you could use one of the high-speed Wi-Fi 5 gigahertz bands as the backhaul as well. And then use the Wi-Fi 6E for clients if you've got like a motherboard or you got a laptop that has Wi-Fi 6E, both, of course, which ASUS makes. And the other option, of course, is you could go with a hardline based connection if you wanted to go that route, right? Where if you really wanted to, you could use a hardline connection and then also create what's called the backhaul in that way. So there's a lot of different options that you can go through in terms of how that works out. So it's not, it's not critical in terms of having to go with one option. You can really kind of go a few different routes, right? So let me break this down here just visually to give you kind of another reference. So here you can see, let me just actually remove this here so you guys can see this maybe a little bit more clearly. So this is essentially what the router has right here is you have 1 2.4, one 5 gigahertz, another 5 gigahertz, and then that 6 gigahertz. So you have all 4 of those. And then we also have what are called 160 megahertz channels, which essentially is how wide that channel is, which is really important to also the bandwidth perspective. And again, you can take one of these channels right here, and you can go ahead and connect 2 routers together with one of these. So you could do it with the 6 gigahertz, or you could do it with the 5 gigahertz, or you could also do it with the hardline based connection. So you've got a couple of different ways that you can essentially set the router up in terms of a what's called AI mesh or a mesh based network environment. But you don't necessarily have to do that for many people. Even in a large home like my home, it's about 2,800 square feet, maybe a little bit more than that. I can run one ROG Rapture and it covers my entire house from the top floor all the way to the bottom floor, to my garage, to my front patio, to even a little bit of my backyard. Actually, most of my backyard. So one router, you can really actually have a great deal of coverage. You don't have to have a mesh network. And actually, in most situations, a single router, especially a high-speed router, will offer potentially faster client speeds than a mesh network router. Really, only a mesh network router would provide faster speeds at what are called last mile points of connections, because generally the signal might be a little bit greater in those last mile zones than they would be in the, let's say, the majority of the coverage area for the router. Okay, so let's go back there, and actually let me just check and see if we had any questions there before I keep kind of moving in on some of those other points there. I'd love to see a file transfer test from the AXE 16000 to an Extreme board. Yeah, that's a really good thing. I think definitely as we get a little bit closer to the release for this product, that's definitely something you can work on. And I have some plans for actually some PCDIY live streams specifically on networking, and maybe some content videos that we'll put out on our channel to, I think, do some real world transfer tests with Wi-Fi 6E and 10 gigabit and 2.5 gigabit and things like that. So people can kind of see what the realistic real world experience is. We do have a couple of those videos that we've done for Wi-Fi 6 when it first came out, but definitely I understand where you're coming from. So thanks for that feedback, and stay tuned. Hopefully we'll have some content for you like that in that too distant future. AXE multi-WAN load. Yeah, so you do have a lot of flexibility in terms of how you can run multi-WAN configurations. Both these units will actually support multi-WAN setups if you do want to do that. Now, keep in mind, this model does have a 2.5 gigabit WAN port on it, so it's already designed to, you don't really have to have a multi-WAN type configuration unless it's for a backup-based purpose. But that's entirely up to you, but it is already 2.5 gigabit enabled. The bridge mode, I'm not sure what you mean. It does support media bridge, and it also supports AI mesh mode. So you can go ahead and set it up either way. You can go ahead and do the 10 gigabit wired backhaul if you did want to. You can use essentially the wired ports as a backhaul. Most people won't use them because it's just difficult, right? But if you've got a house that maybe has infrastructure wiring so that you can easily run a cable from one router to another, of course, the best option would be a wired backhaul, and then you can leave the actual wireless channels exposed with full bandwidth, which would be a great scenario if you did want to go that route. Let me see right here. Okay, so I think I covered most of those questions. Let me go ahead and keep going on there. So one of the other things that is going to be new for this model, right, is we talked about the quad band support, the Wi-Fi 6E support, right? You've got the pair of 2 10 gigabit LAN ports that are on here, 4 1 gigabit LAN ports, and then the 2.5 gigabit WAN port. Now, again, this unit does support multi-WAN configuration. So if you wanted to have 2 WAN sources, you could do that. That essentially just means like 2 ISP connections for like a failover protection. You could also set this in unit up as like an access point and have this WAN port work as a LAN port. So that is also a point of flexibility that you have available to you. And you can also see that you could use the 2 1 gigabits LAN ports to create a 2 gigabit LAN connection. So you have what's called link aggregation. That's also popular for users that might maybe also be running to certain types of NASs to maybe even get a little bit better performance from their NAS as well. So one of the other big things in this model is that this goes and steps up to a brand new ultra high performance quad core 64-bit SoC that's operating at 2 gigahertz. So this is a super fast, very, very high performing SoC. So some people might also ask, well, like, why does it matter how fast the kind of the chip is inside the router? And this actually can be a pretty big difference. Your basic routers, if we go back even a few years, they could be something as simple as like a dual core router at 600 megahertz. And over the last few years, we've seen this improve quite a bit to like 1 gigahertz processors, 1.2, 1.4. We've gone to tri-core, and we have now quad-core. A quad-core 2 gigahertz processor is really, really fast. The benefit is, of course, with especially these many channels and a high number of devices, it allows you to have faster processing capabilities for a high number of sustained devices at one time. So that's one part. There are also going to be other things that actually can leverage the CPU. So there are a few things that specifically are very heavy to the router's CPU. One would be like if you want to run on router VPN. So if you have a VPN service and you want to run it on the router so that you don't have to locally run like a VPN on your devices, you can have the VPN run directly on the router, but that actually can impact overhead. So having a fast processor on the router will actually allow the VPN performance to be much better. So that is a very big benefit. And I can tell you that in our testing, we're talking about substantial situations from like one router to like another router, depending on what you're comparing. You could see literally double the performance. So it is a significant improvement that you can have. Another would be USB performance. So if you connect like a hard drive and maybe you're running like a local type of like connected storage to your router, you can have much faster USB performance with a faster based chipset as well. So that is another area. And then other advanced type of what are called like processing aspects of that the router can do, like quality of service and other types of options, will also be superior when you have a faster chipset. Now, when we go back to the router here, those ports, there's also going to be a dedicated gaming port. So if you just wired your device straight into that gaming port, no configuration required, it will automatically be prioritized. Of course, we do have our ASUS quality of service options. So you can go in there and you can prioritize for gaming, you can prioritize for streaming, you can prioritize for video meetings. You can all do that on the fly with the ASUS Router app. It's really, really simple. It's really, really easy. It's not complicated to do any of that. And you can also prioritize devices. So it's not just prioritize the experiences, you can prioritize devices. So if you want to prioritize like your console or your TV or your streaming box or your desktop gaming system, you could do any one of those things. Just go in there and just drag that system as the primary system that you want to prioritize, and it can all be done in a nice little order. These routers also do offer what's called traffic analysis. So we can do per packet analysis, which is pretty crazy. It means that every single packet that comes through the network, wired and wireless, we can evaluate it. We can figure out what it is. So we know how much you're streaming on Netflix, how much you're browsing, how much you're downloading, and how much every device on your network is using. This can be really, really interesting if you also don't know how your network is being used. So over time, what you can do is you can enable Traffic Analyzer. And when you look at that information, after a month, you can literally see, oh, my security camera, my laptop, my console, my TV, my son, my daughter, my brother, whoever, right? How much bandwidth they're using across all the different devices is broken down to in a really easy to see format. So that's a really advanced feature that is available to you on these units, right? So that is going to be most of the key elements right there. And there's also a lot of improvements that we've done here in terms of kind of some of the design elements for the inside of the router. Let me see if I think I might have one of the, let me see. I think I might have one here. Yeah. So there's also some cool things that we've done on the inside of this unit for the actual, what's called the topology. So we also have people look at also kind of just the external antennas, but there's actually also some refinement for the internal. There's actually antennas that are wired directly into the body for even further improved what's called attenuation and RF handling. So this, along with our range boost technology, gives us better coverage and better stability. So it's not just your standard antennas, but you actually have these internal antennas that are also optimized in terms of their layout. And then even beyond that, there's some cool things here. Let me see if I have it. Might have it here. Yeah. Yeah, so even the heat sink, which is kind of crazy because routers are left on for an extended period of time. They actually have a pretty robust heat sink that's in here, where there's even a nanocarbon layer that's on the actual heat sink, which helps to improve the thermal dissipation, because most people are never going to turn off the router, and the router can actually load up quite heavily, especially with that quad core CPU in there. A lot of that memory, it has a high level of DDR memory that's built in there with that chipset, and it's running 24 hours a day, right? It's important to be able to ensure stable and reliable operation over time. So there's actually quite a robust heat sink in there with that new even nanocarbon layer design there to really be able to ensure stable and reliable operation over time. So that is going to be most of the key elements that I wanted to touch on for the AXE 16,000. And now I want to talk about a little bit just to kind of just give a compare and contrast to the GT AX 11,000 Pro, but I want to make sure that if anybody has any questions there on the AXE 16,000, that I get those covered. So let me just see if we've got any questions there on the 16,000. So give me 1 second here. And if I need to recap any of those specs, just let me know, guys, and I will recap those specs. So. Okay, so let's see any questions right there. You may need a mesh if you have a dead zone. My AXE covers large. Yeah, so that's exactly what I was talking about right there. So Zeru LX11 made a really good point. So yeah, the AXE 11,000 take, for instance, or like I said, the ROG Rapture, I've run 2 different Raptures. I had the AC5300 and then the AX 11,000 and then the AXE. That, like I said, in a 2,800 square foot, even a 3,000 square foot foam, can give you almost pretty much all the coverage. I would only probably say in kind of last mile coverage zone. So maybe in the last 20%. So as you maybe start to get to like a garage, maybe the furthest bedroom, maybe like a backyard or a large patio environment, or it also just depends on your environment, you may need then a mesh. That's where mesh is advantageous. And going with a like a tri-band based router, like one of these models, or even the quad band, that's the benefit, is that you can then use one of those really big fat connections in terms of that wireless connection, pair the 2 routers together, and then have this really high speed network. Because normally under a basic mesh network configuration, you're going to use a much lower band as what's called the backhaul. It's probably going to be the 2.4 gigahertz band because that provides the best range, but it's a much smaller pipe. So that means that while you can still have a very good stable coverage, the overall effective speed and the bandwidth that's available to you across that network is quite a bit smaller. So ideally, the best type of mesh network infrastructure really is a Wi-Fi 6 tri-band, or now a quad band based option. Okay, great point there. So let me see. What's the time frame for release? Hey, Robert, right now, no specifics. We'll definitely be coming out in the not too distant future with more information. Make sure to keep it tuned here, either to our PCDIY group or our weekly live streams on Friday for more information. Hey, that's a really good question. Why didn't they not have ASUS or a sync? It's just a really complex to be able to enable if we were to try to do ASUS or a wireless sync. It is something that we are evaluating, but right now, just due to the kind of the technical difficulties and cost complexities of integrating that type of functionality, and that most users don't really feel that they need it, it's something that we're not, right now committed in terms of kind of doing, but, possibly in the future, right? So just keep that in mind, and thank you. I think somebody was asking, let me see right there. Oh, it's how much memory is on the unit. So this is a very high grade router in terms of the RAM. This is 1 gigabyte of DDR memory that's on this router. What the Fax versus Outfax? What the Fast versus Outfox? So Outfox is the replacement service that we're offering. They're similar. They're both essentially kind of gamer-centric VPN services. So in terms of their overall functionality, they are going to be similar, but there are some differences. And I would make sure to actually check out Outfox's page. You can find out a bit more of that information regarding how some of the similarities exist and where some of the differences exist. But they are still essentially a gamer-centric VPN, which is built into the ROG Rapture series routers. So lastly, I think before I go to the next router, would this router be great for a large home with a basement, or a mesh router be better? Overall, it really it's always a little bit hard to say. I will recap and say again that I think that for most situations, a high performance single router is the best if you're talking about wanting to get the best speed. Mesh routers are generally most favorable for coverage, but it could be that the coverage, even while it's stable, is going to be at a much lower speed. If you kind of really want the best of both worlds, then the best route to go is with an AI mesh tri-band based solution. Now we offer both. We have Zen Wi-Fi, which is our more consumer Wi-Fi products, which have tri-band based mesh networks where you get 2 in a box already and it's all set up. Or you can get one of our gaming grade routers or any number of our routers that we have that are tri-band, and then make your own mesh network through AI Mesh, which is very easy and very simple. You can literally do it in a couple minutes with our app that is supported on all of our routers. And the other really cool thing that I love about the AI Mesh feature is that you don't have to change any of your network settings or configurations to add the other router. So you can literally have your whole system set up working, and then you find maybe I just need a little bit more coverage, then just get the other router. There's an option that says add a node, click add node, set it up, and pretty much you're done. So it's not a complicated process. Okay. So let's go ahead and lastly touch here on the GTX AE 11000 Pro, which is, I think I already showed you guys in an image, right? So let me just bring that up again there one more time. Sorry, give me 1 second here to bring that 11000 Pro up. And I think it's, yeah, here it is, 11,000. So, yep. So this is the 11,000. Like I said, it looks very similar to the 16,000, but this is going to be a little bit different in terms of this is a tri-band based unit, right? And for most people, this is still probably the better option in terms of kind of price and feature set and kind of everything that kind of goes along with it. Although the quad band is nice, the quad band is going to even be more expensive, right? And really what you're getting here when you go with this model is going to be, of course, tri-band, which the big benefit with going with tri-band is that you're just going to have essentially that 6 gigahertz band that's going to be available. You have also the expanded Wi-Fi 5 gigahertz spectrum. So one thing that a lot of people kind of don't get that's a little bit tricky to understand, right, is, excuse me, not the 6 gigahertz band. This is, excuse me, a tri-band based model, but 2.4 gigahertz and then 5 gigahertz. And then the two 5 gigahertz spectrums that you have, one is going to be expanded. And it's almost equivalent to essentially like a 6 gigahertz band. So what can be kind of a little bit tricky about understanding when you're talking about wireless is that when we talk about like those 2.4 and that 5 gigahertz band, is that in the past, essentially there was portions of the spectrum that were essentially blocked out by the FCC, by the government in North America. Essentially, you could not use that space. It wasn't what's referred to as unregulated space that could be used for Wi-Fi, which is an unregulated space. This is the reason why regulated-based devices, which are much more critical, things like RF frequencies, like in a microwave or like in a pacemaker or in many other devices, they actually take priority and they will push out Wi-Fi because they are regulated and have a lot of requirements. This is also why certain devices, you don't want to put them around a router because they will essentially overpower the router because they're defined to essentially be priority as opposed to what the wireless spectrum is for Wi-Fi. But in 2020, the FCC opened up more space within the 5 gigahertz spectrum, essentially these additional channels, which offer even faster speed. So this moves up into like 5.9 gigahertz. This can offer even much faster speeds, and essentially is opening up another 160 megahertz channel, which is fantastic because before there was only 260 megahertz channels, and now you got 360 megahertz channels. So this just ultimately comes down to just giving you a faster experience. So if you've got a lot of these high performance AX Wi-Fi 6 enabled devices, it's fantastic. They're just going to perform faster and give you a better experience. Or optimally, if you took two of these units and you use that 5 gigahertz band as that backhaul, you really would have a really ultra high speed fast connection with that. So it's similar to kind of like what we're talking about the quad band with the Wi-Fi 6E, but the difference that you also always want to keep in mind is just like it's always been, where 2.4 gigahertz is better for long range. 5 gigahertz can still be pretty good at long range, but it's not going to be as good as 2.4. The 5 gigahertz is still going to be farther than the 6 gigahertz, right? So as you move up in that frequency spectrum, generally gets shorter and shorter. So imagine this being like 2.4 gigahertz. This is like 5 gigahertz. This is like 6 gigahertz, right? So having essentially the flexibility to pick which bands you want to do for different things can be beneficial, right? So to recap here, in terms of our specifications, let me go ahead and just pull that up. So yes, we've got the 2.4, the 5 gigahertz, and the 5 gigahertz, right? This model will still also have the quad core 2 gigahertz processor, 1 gigabyte worth of RAM that's on here. The WAN port is also still going to be a 2.5 gigabit WAN port that's on this unit. This also could be remapped though. You could use it just as an access point and then have that work as a LAN. You then also have one 2.5 gigabit LAN port and then 4 1 gigabit ports that are on this unit. And then one USB 3 port and one USB 2 port that are on this unit. So those are pretty much all the key specifications on that model right there. And then all the kind of our optimization features that I talked about, the traffic analysis, the quality of service options, the outfox functionality, all of those things are all similarly built in. The support for AI mesh, those are all going to be identical. For the AXE 11,000 it is right now, I would say TBD as far as what may change in that regard. Hey, so that's a really good question. When somebody's asking, they do USB 3 5 gigabits. So this is USB 3.2 Gen 1, but the reality is routers perform very differently in terms of their file handling performance than they do on a computer. So you can't make, I think, a generalized comparison, because if we were talking about 5 gigabits on a PC, 5 gigabits gives you almost going to give you 500 megabytes, and that could really be achievable. You're not going to get 500 megabytes on a router. In reality, the general best performance you're going to have with a fast drive quality drive may be exceeding even 100 megabytes, which is quite good. Many NASs for a long time were limited to much less than 100 megabytes. But generally, I would say that you're going to be looking. I don't have the performance analysis results yet for this, but I would, based on prior experience, that you would probably be somewhere between about like conservatively like 100 to maybe nearing like 125 to maybe even a bit more, maybe 150 megabytes a second if you had a fast drive that was attached in terms of the overall performance. Read performance also generally is going to always be a little bit higher than write performance, but that's what you would be looking at. So it's USB 3, but it's not going to be to the same performance level that you would have as the USB 3 performance that you might see like on a PC. So do keep that in mind. Hey, Mr. Simonok 1969, how many devices can these routers handle at once? That's always a tricky, kind of complicated question to answer, but I would think that for any kind of modern, robust digital home environment, you're not going to run into a device handling limit. So we're talking 25, 35, 45, 50 devices are going to be entirely manageable within these routers in terms of the class of their units. Okay, so I think that probably handles all those. Yes, QoS support. All these units do offer our quality of service functionality, so you're good to go. You don't have to worry about the quality of service functionality being there. That's correct. Yep. That's exactly what I would be thinking. Yeah, I got 139 megabytes from my AXE using a USB 3.0 to SATA adapter over 2.5 gig. That's right in line where I would be expecting. Generally, you're not going to usually see more than 150 megabytes. That would be a stretch. These units, like I said, they might be even a little bit faster because they even have a faster chipset. But like I said, there are some file handling protocol aspects in there that you have to be accounted for. But like I said, that's in the range of performance that you would generally be looking at. Okay. All right. I can't confirm on whether or not you'll see anything relative to the AXE 11,000 in that regard, but make sure, if you're probably aware, ASUS does a really aggressive kind of firmware update policy on our units to consistently be fine-tuning, improving the feature set, the functionality, and the performance of our routers as we release new firmware for units. But generally, because there are regulatory compliance factors that have to go into consideration, and even some actually attenuation things when you're talking about handling if different bands, it wouldn't necessarily be a guarantee that you would see that through a firmware update, because there are other factors that have to be accounted for. So as of right now, I would say that this is the only model that we're essentially affirming that has this essentially new Uni 4 Spectrum support. Okay. All right. So overall, guys, I think that covers it, right? We have talked about a huge number of products today with this CES recap, right? Where we have literally, I think, covered out everything that we were going to talk about in terms of all the new products that we had from CES, ranging from our new monitors to our new peripherals to new headsets. I'm lastly just going to show you guys here, just to wrap it up here, just the new boards that we came out with here at the very end as a touchstone point. Just so you guys can see what we've got going on. So let me go ahead and bring these up right here. And you can see, I will show this to you guys. So the first one that we got right here is going to be the ROG Strix B660-A. So this is going to be on the B660 based chipset. This is going to be a great option for those of you that are not looking for overclocking support in relation to the CPU. You can still, of course, have overclocking support on the memory. This is going to be a DDR4 based version that we're going to have available, but a white based offering. Fantastic base motherboard. If you're going to be looking for something that's going to be a little bit more price aggressive, these boards are all going to be considerably under the price points of the Z690 series motherboards. But if you are looking for a white theme board, you're looking for B series chipset support, still looking for really solid set specifications. So Wi-Fi 6, 2.5 gigabit LAN, ALC 4082, PCI Gen 4 support for the M.2 SSDs, PCI Gen 5 support for the graphics cards, right? Nice M.2 heatsinks, good audio design, multiple RGB headers that are going to be on the board, solid and robust VRM power delivery, and even our ASUS 8 mode, which will help to unlock the power limits for locked CPUs like the 12400 series or other CPUs that you might use on these boards. This is going to be a really solid option. I think the price point for this board is going to be $239. So really solid option, and this is going to be DDR4. Next up, I want to show the mini ITX board. So let me show you here. This is going to be the ROG Strix B660-I. So this is going to be the ROG Strix B660-I, another really great choice for those of you who are going to be looking for a small form factor gaming build. It does have a couple of nice benefits. So for some people that want to go for those small form factor builds that found some compatibility concerns with larger traditional tower heatsinks, because this has a chipset heatsink that has a lower Z height for this VRM heatsink and also doesn't have our triple decker M.2 design, then you can actually fit larger base coolers on here. Although again, you're probably going to be running a non-K CPU in here, but you could still have a very high CPU, right? You could technically go to like a Core i9-12900 on there, which would still be a very high performing part. And if you also did the ASUS 8 feature where you unlock the power limits to even be able to run faster performance, that is where you could actually benefit with using either an AIO or a large tower-based heatsink. So that does give you flexibility. You can still run dual M.2 based SSDs on here, both PCI Gen 4. You got an internal USB-C header on there, front USB 3, 4 SATA ports on there. You also have ARGB header support. Still good quality audio. This is the Supreme Effects ALC 2020 as opposed to the 4080, which you're going to have on the ATX baseboard, but you still have 2.5 gigabit LAN and Wi-Fi 6 that's also going to be on this board. This is the ROG Strix B660-I, and this one, I'll have to double check the price point. I think it's either $219 or $239. It's one or the other, I think, in terms of that price point. Sorry. JJ, yes, definitely the builder spotlight will return next week, so no worries right there. Yes, this week we're just focusing because we had so much just to cover in terms of the CES roadmap. Definitely next week we will have the builder spotlight come back. Right now, there's no plans that I can tell you that we have any plans for a Matrix series or Poseidon series. Those cards are very complex and they tend to be more specialized in terms of their design and release. So they're not always going to be consistently produced. That being noted, never say never, but as of right now, there are no plans. The most recent cards that we've released have been the Strix LC series, the Noctua series, and then our traditional Strix series. And then, of course, we have other series like our Dual series, our Tough Gaming series, and our Phoenix series, and also the KO series. Just within that, that's really already a huge number of cards in terms of design, production, and R&D effort. So no plans at this point to produce other cards. Will ASUS sell the 1700 Macking bracket? All of the new, actually, LC2 series that were sold officially in North America all came with the mounting bracket. We actually held releasing those coolers specifically to repackage them with a bracket. Now, if you bought your cooler from a third-party reseller that might have imported the unit, you might have not gotten the bracket. If that's the case, reach out to the service and support team, and they can work with you at seeing if they still have on-hand stock for availability for the 1700 bracket. But all of the Strix LC2 series that are officially sold in North America, the Tough Gaming LC2 series, the RYUJIN 2, all came with the 1700 bracket in the box. Okay. So that is going to be the ROG Strix B660-i gaming. Okay. And then I think we've also got one other board here with the ROG Strix Z690-A, which I kind of showed you right here. That's this one right here. This is the DDR4 version, but it is pretty similar to the DDR5 version. Essentially, we're going to be making just this same exact board in the DDR5 version. So this model is super popular, and right now we had only offered outside of the Prime Z690-A and the Maximus Z690 formula, there wasn't another wide offering. So now we have 3 wide offerings that are all DDR5. So you can also go with the ROG Strix-A, but now in either DDR4 or in DDR5. And, you know, this board is going to be fantastic in terms of its overall feature set. This fully supports, of course, overclocking, has our ASUS AI overclocking support. If you want to find out more about ASUS AI overclocking, you can watch the full live stream and demo that I did on overclocking your 12th gen series CPUs. It's on the YouTube channel. You can check it out, and it will guide you through the entire process. And you can actually see how we easily, effectively, and reliably can overclock 12th gen series CPUs, whether it's a 12600K, 1200K, 1200K, you know, 3, 4, 500 megahertz through per core adaptive voltage policies. You can set your own temperature targets. You can set your own frequency targets. You can do voltage caps. You can do all kinds of really cool things. But if you just turn it on, it's going to be efficient, effective, and reliable. And it's a really awesome feature that this board does offer is ASUS AIOC. It also has AMP memory support, which AMP memory support is pretty crazy, where we can take standard DDR5 and not XMP-based memory, and we can then customize the operating parameters and be able to either give you tighter timings or higher frequencies. So in another video, you can actually see a demo where I show taking like this 4800 kit of memory and running it either at much tighter timings or also running it at 6,000 megahertz with even still tighter timings than the native 4800 timings. So that's the ASUS AMP feature that we have. And one other really cool feature that this board has that some of you probably already know about is the ASUS Q release feature right here. I guess I can probably show you this guy's really quick right here. Give me 1 second, but probably most of you already seen this feature. So let me just see if I can line this board up right here. There we go. And you can see right there, so you'll see that there's a button right here, right? And traditionally, this is what you would try to depress when you would install a graphics card. And the tricky part, though, is, of course, that when you install your graphics card, it can be a little bit tricky to access that button right now, right? It's hard to get your finger in there to depress it. But the benefit now is with the Q release design, you can pretty much just press this button, and this will eject the card for you, right? So it will make it a really simple process, and that is a feature that you have that ASUS has invented, just like so many of our other customized features. Another really cool one is going to be the M.2 Q release design, excuse me, Q latch design, which you'll see right here. So one of the cool things that we've done recently on many of the motherboards is they all feature what's called captive screws. So you don't have to worry about losing the screws. So when you remove your screws, remove the heatsink, the screws are not going to come off. They actually stay attached. But then when you have to install the M.2 SSD, the other cool part right here is that you don't have any screws that you actually have to attach. There's no standoff. There's no screw. You don't have to worry about stripping a screw, dropping a screw, anything like that. It's literally all built in. So you can just take your M.2 SSD. I just angle it in, I drop it down, and then once I drop it down, I can lock it into place, and it's all set. So it's a really, really easy process to be able to install your M.2 SSDs. So that is a really awesome feature that we have on many of our Z690 boards. But those two features right there, along with ASUS AIOC, along with so many other features that we have, are some really cool reasons why you might want to check out some of our 12th gen series boards. And if you have more questions on any of those motherboards, we had a full recent live stream that dived into our B and H series motherboards. It's on our YouTube channel as a video on demand. On Facebook, it's on video on demand. And if you want to find out about the Z690 motherboards, we also have an ASUS Z690 AMA that's also there that you can check out on both YouTube and Facebook. All right. So let me just see any last questions right there. Okay, so I think that overall pretty much covers everything in terms of what we wanted to be able to touch on for CES 2020, guys. This has been a pretty long stream, but hopefully you guys found it useful and interesting. And hopefully next time, like I said, we will be reintroducing back the PCDIY Builders Spotlight. So if you guys are not familiar on that, the PCDIY Builders Spotlight is where we like to highlight PC builders systems, whether they're ATX, micro ATX, mini ITX, water cooled or air cooled, it doesn't matter. You have the opportunity to have your systems actually shown off here on the stream. We love to talk about them and be able to give you guys the recognition, the credit for supporting ASUS. So if you guys are interested in that, make sure to check out the ASUS PC DIY Facebook group. Once you actually check out our group, there's actually a submission form that we have there that you can go ahead and drop your system in and then have the opportunity to be featured here on the stream. So it's one of my favorite parts of the actual live streams that we do here. So I would strongly recommend that if you have an ASUS-centered system, make sure to go ahead and consider submitting it for the ASUS PC DIY Builder Spotlight. So unless we have any last questions right here, I think that wraps everything up for us, guys. I'm going to go ahead and just drop the links in here in the chat for the group. I'm also going to go ahead and drop the links in there, I think, for the routers, because I don't think that I got the router links in there. So give me 1 second to drop the router links into the chat as well. So I will give it a moment there if anybody has any last questions right there, or if I missed any other links that I needed to drop there in the chat. So here is the links for the ROG Rapture routers. And we got that in there. Okay. Hey, Kevin, thanks so much, man. You take care, take it easy, enjoy the rest of your Friday night, and have a safe and healthy weekend. Everybody else that joined us here for the stream, thank you guys so much. You guys take care, take it easy, enjoy the rest of your days, and stay safe and stay healthy.